And the seagulls follow the trawl. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
And as we say now in my country, they brought the buzz and they left the buzz in front of the goal.
And the guy's talking absolute nonsense. I've never heard so much rubbish in my life.
Normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
I'm telling you, don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, or perhaps is it? Oh no, ladies and gentlemen, because it's that season. It's one of the ones I've been putting off, but it's finally here. We're going to just man up, going to bite the bullet. We're going to do it. It is season 1999-2000 on the Bustalgia tour tonight. The infamous John Barnes, Kenny Dalglish season. It's been one on the back burner for a little while, but here we are. We have finally arrived. I know that Kieran McFadden, you have been very, very persistent in asking me in the chat. So this one is for you, young man. This one is for you. Because, here we go. We're going to do John Barnes season. But I said at the start, I said I will not shy away from the bad seasons. We will get around to talking about them, because my biggest fear is always, as long as there's something to talk about, I don't mind. And this season, there's certainly stuff to talk about, albeit it's not the best of stuff, but yeah, we will digest it all. So as you can see, it's the original time traveling team on the Bustalgia tour tonight. Russell, Boyce, how you doing, mate?
All good. I was enjoying doing the old homework, Phil, and looking back on this, and it's there's loads to talk about. I've got to say, Liam, watching you unmute yourself through the intro was comedy gold. So basically, when the intro music starts, we all automatically, just by like the StreamYard platform, go into mute. Liam's clearly, the whole year he's been doing this, never picked up on it. And I could just see a wee thumbnail of him attacking his phone going, come on. So that made the intro perfect, mate. But very good evening to you all.
Yes, indeed. Liam, we've not seen you on the bus for a few days. Have you been enjoying your week, sir?
Aye, it's good. It's really good. We've had a successful Sunday. Problem is, there's nobody to get it. Like, I've not met anybody this week that could get it right up, you know. So I've been trying it from afar, you know. So anybody that's even got an inkling or a look, you know, it just, you know, I was really dismissive to a guy with brown brogues the other day just because how close I could probably get to get out of here, you know. But here, so you miss that part, you know, living in Canada. But Aye, but to the rest of you there, and everybody watching, Bob, and the rest of you, aye, get it right up you. Because you know what? Scalping. 2-1, but it was a bloody scalping. So
It was, yeah.
I've watched all the replays. That's what I like. Just go through YouTube now, watch the highlights, and it's like it's like Dana Rubik's Cube watching Ange's team, how they cut them open for that second goal. It was just like bang, 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 and now I'm like to see all the different takes on it. So aye, that's what I'm going to say about it. But can't wait for the next one, because I think the next one definitely give them a shot.
Yeah, April the 8th, I believe, in the league. Easter weekend, isn't it? Aye, so got that to look forward to. But no, it's been. I thought I would get your take on it there, because I know you've not been on the bus all week, so always good to get more opinion on it and more feelings on it, because yeah, you can't get enough of beating them, especially in cup finals. So yeah, we'll. It's good to get your take on that one there, Liam. And of course, unfortunately, tonight, there won't be much of that. Unfortunately, the topic matter, but nevertheless, we will push on. So before we get into all that, though, I will remind all the viewers about all that good stuff that helps out the channel massively. So, of course, if you've only just discovered the Bhoycie Bus and you like the cut of our jib, then by all means hit that subscribe button. And of course, remember to press the little bell button to get the notifications when we go live. And of course, if you're a long-time viewer, hit that like button, because it helps us out massively. And once again, in the comments, I've put a little poll tonight, because I like to put these on Bustalgia now. It's like a wee bit of engagement. But tonight, the poll is all about the much maligned Raphael Felipe Scheid. Remember him? We signed him this season. So it's a really simple question. Taking value for money into the sort of like the barometer for this. Is he the worst signing in Celtic history, given the amount we paid and what we actually got out of him? So simply yes or no. And if it's no, then obviously stick it in the comments, and we'll be discussing that when I look at the results at the end. Because yeah, he was one of the many talking points of this season, old Raphael, the bold Raphael Felipe Scheid. So yeah, he'll be definitely got a couple of mentions tonight. And of course, if you wish to share the link of the Bhoycie Bus, then by all means do so. Head over to our sponsors, piesports.com, get an order in and use the code BUS1888 and get a very tasty 12.5% off your order. Couldn't recommend it enough.
I like that, Phil. Very good. Very good. A tasty 12.5. Bit of alliteration in there as well. Your voice on fire.
Tasty. And of course, speaking of being on fire, look at this. This is still, come on, guys, get your Bhoycie Bus shirt now. Russell, how's things going? How can they get their shirts? Remind them all again.
You can purchase the shirt by going to paypal.com and sending £40 for the shirt and an optional postage and packaging fee to crookedarm@ymail.com. If you don't have PayPal, just send an email to crookedarm@ymail.com and I will fire you the old bank details. You can get it sent over. We are getting closer to that magical order number where we can get them out. And the podcast team, I know, are all waiting with anticipation on theirs arriving, because our order is already in. And I think once you see us all rocking them, I think folk will be like, actually, he's one of them.
Tasty.
Oh, definitely. Tasty. A tasty shot. Tasty pie and a tasty shot. Yeah. I've got some tasty trivia for you if you're interested. Trivia with a little bit of a twist tonight, because normally every time we do Bustalgia, the trivia is always like purely focused on Celtic. It's not totally focused on Celtic. It is, however, focused on a big subject of this season. So the question tonight is, in the summer of 1999, Manchester United were the team of the moment, having won the treble of the domestic league, domestic cup and European Cup. Turns out 6 other teams have achieved this. Can you name the 6 other teams that have matched that?
Ask me that again.
So Man United in the summer of 99, they won the European Cup, the Premier League and the FA Cup. So they're domestic. They're 2 big domestic trophies in the European Cup. And there's 6 other teams that have achieved that in the history of European football. Can you name the 6 other teams?
So
there you go.
But no Premier League, right? Like, you mean their domestic league?
They've won their domestic league, their domestic cup, and they've won the European Cup.
So any European team?
Any European team. There's 6 of them have done it.
6.
I got one.
Yeah. Well, put it this way. There's one that you should definitely get, and if you don't, then I'll be very, very ashamed. But yeah. The other 6, there's a couple of surprises in there. To put it lightly, there's a couple of surprise ones. But yeah, that's the rather than it just being a total Celtic question tonight, it's something relating to the time period. Because yeah, in the summer of '99, Man United were the team. They were the team with what they achieved. So yeah, that's tonight's question.
Okay.
There
I
we
like
go.
it. I've got a few ideas jotted down. A few
Okay,
ideas.
doc. So let's get into it in the summer of 1999, the last summer of the millennium. Yeah, so we're going into a bold new world, the year 2000. The Y2K bug is on the horizon. But yeah, first and foremost, what's going on in the summer in 1999? Because we've already covered the 1999 season. What happened at the end of that one? So in football winners, so I just say Man United for getting all the headlines. They won the Champions League in very, very dramatic fashion, defeating Bayern Munich in the final in Barcelona. They were 1-0 down for over 80 minutes of the game, and in stoppage time, Teddy Sheringham and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer scored the goals to win them the trophy. It was one of the most memorable Champions League finals I can remember watching. It was phenomenal. I'm not even a Man United fan, but even I found myself getting caught up in the moment, but I was like, happy for them. It was a hell of a finish to the game, so I enjoyed that one. Now in the UEFA Cup, we had Parma smashing Marseille 3-0 in the final held in Moscow. This is one of the UEFA Cups that Parma have unfortunately had to sell in years gone by because of their financial plight that they found themselves in. They had to auction off their trophies to raise money. And yeah, this is one of them. But yeah, they won the UEFA Cup. But that late 90s, early 2000s Parma side, they are a frighteningly good team. But yeah, ran into a lot of financial problems and years later. And here's another thing, guys.
Nostalgia on Parma, eh?
You probably could, by the way. You probably could. The stories there. Just Italian football in general as well. Whenever we do any sort of 90s related nostalgia show, Italian football is dominant in terms of the transfers, the personalities there. My God. And speaking of which, the Cup Winners' Cup was still around in 99. This is the last ever Cup Winners' Cup that was decided, and it was another Italian team that won that. It was Lazio. Sven-Goran Eriksson, soon to be all-conquering Lazio. They beat Real Mallorca 2-1 in the final. Christian Vieri and Pavel Nedved scored the goals. Danny, who would go on to sign for Barcelona, was the scorer for Mallorca. But yeah, Pavel Nedved scored the last ever goal in the Cup Winners' Cup, and it's an absolute screamer as well. A volley from outside the area. At Villa Park, the game was held. But yeah, they beat Mallorca 2-1 to lift the last ever Cup Winners' Cup. That's the Italian football. Parma winning that one. You've got Lazio lifting that. I think the year before, Inter Milan won the UEFA Cup.
So Villa Park, Phil, that must mean in the space of a month, I'd hosted that Ryan Giggs goal, that dribble for the halfway line in extra time against Arsenal, and that Nedved volley.
It did.
Do you know what I mean? That's mad. Eh?
I did. It was
2 games at Villa Park with 2 of the best goals of a calendar year, and Aston Villa didn't play in either.
No, they didn't.
Bonkers, eh?
That's good pub quiz trivia, that one.
That is. I never even twigged that. It was Villa Park for Nedved.
It was. But yeah, the last ever Cup Winners' Cup went to Lazio. Now, in terms of the other big winners around the country, Man U, they won the Premier League. They stopped Arsenal on the last day of the season, beating Tottenham 2-1 at Old Trafford, and they also picked up the FA Cup, as I said. They beat Newcastle 2-0 in the final there, and a League Cup final, which has actually been mentioned before on Bustalgia. It seems to find a way to get mentioned. Tottenham defeating Martin O'Neill's Leicester City 1-0. I believe
Alan Nielsen diving header.
I was going to say Stefan Everson. It was the other Scandinavian midfielder they had, Alan Nielsen. Right.
Alan Nielsen diving header. I was going Tonto. I thought it was a Spurs fan back then.
I remember you said
that. I told you I had loads of kits. So that was the first time I'd seen them like win something. I was going mental. Honestly, like celebrate like a Celtic goal. Honestly. I didn't even care about Tottenham. Do you know what I mean? But I did at the time.
As we've established for you, got that Klinsmann hairstyle. That's why I said it was.
It was because I was always diving about in the muck.
That Klinsmann trait, right?
I didn't even know that's what his name was. I just liked the fact he did that. I was like, what's he doing? I'm having a bit of that. Every time I come in, Mum's got to do the Daz doorstep challenge, you know what I mean? She's like, oh, for fuck's sake, what have you been doing?
The Daz doorstep challenge. There's a time capsule right there. My God. Jesus Christ, we're bringing all the 90s stuff tonight.
All right, come on, can't you let that go? Share it with the Canadian here. What's the Daz doorstep challenge?
No, the Daz and the fucking soap powder, man. Do you know what I mean?
Fighting somebody's dad at their door. Oh,
no, Superstore at 4 on the bus, mate. We don't do the Dad doorstep challenge as well. It's Superstore at 4. No Dad doorstep challenges. Do you know what I mean?
I was Shane Ritchie that did the adverts for that?
I think it was, and then Dale Whitten.
Yeah, I think so.
Dale Whitten had a wee...
racking the brain here. Really nostalgic tonight. My God. Didn't expect Dad's Doorstep Challenge to get a mention, but there you go.
That's a good point, Alan Woods. Sorry, mate. You're right.
Yeah.
I was celebrating Spurs beat Martin O'Neill.
Leicester's League Cup exploits have came up a few times on Bustalgia. Say Martin O'Neill obviously is very much woven into the fabric of Celtic and winning those League Cups that he did. But he could have had 3 League Cups, but Tottenham stopped him in 1999 from winning that. But fair play to him, because Leicester definitely were not the big spenders in that league and what he achieved. Oh man,
they couldn't even afford the pin back nets. Remember, like, all the teams had, like, the peg back nets. You go to Filbert Street, they've still got, like, the 1980s ones. You know what I mean? Mind
so
that.
Is that the reason why? I thought...
Oh, no, fuck it. I don't know. But, I mean, well, what was the reason? Like, surely you would just look at the trends and go, right, we'll just get some poles and pin back the nets like everyone else. And they were the only ones. It ruins that Bergkamp goal.
The Bergkamp goal.
I'm like,
yeah,
that should be in pegged back nets. Do you know? Have you ever thought of that?
That's like the one against Matt Elliott where he controls it in the bio. Yeah. Now that you mention it, and I can see it in my head, the goals were the pinned back nets. I never even thought of that wee difference, but oh man, that's 19. I don't think any teams rock that nowadays, especially the top divisions. You very seldom see that. No pin back nets, but again, just 1990s football. Now we've covered the 98-99 season, unfortunately, Dr. Joe season. Rangers won everything that season, so we'll quickly move on from that. If you wish to go back and watch the Dr. Joe episode of Bustalgia, you can. It's right there on the channel. But yeah, spoiler, it didn't end very well for us that season, so let's just quickly move on from that. So what else is happening around the continent? In Spain, it was Barcelona won the league. In Italy, it was AC Milan. Bayern Munich, of course, won it in Germany. In France, something a bit different. It was Bordeaux that won it. I was like, wow, Bordeaux, how did that happen? Sylvain Wiltord was their main striker at that point.
Wow, okay.
I looked at their team and I was like, who was playing for them? I think Christophe Dugarry was still there at that point. But
Dugarry, that's what I was thinking of.
Wiltord is their main man, scores 20-something goals that season. And of course, he signs for Arsenal a couple of years later. But that's what he was. But they won Ligue 1 in France.
Pauletta, was he there as well?
Pauletta, Portuguese. He definitely played for Bordeaux, but I don't know if it was that early. I'm not sure.
Very close.
I'll be there or thereabouts. But yeah, Bordeaux, I've not seen them come up yet. Now I've recapped the big winners around Europe and Bustalgia at this point. I've not seen Bordeaux's name ever come up. But yeah, they did win the title in 1999. In Portugal, though, there wasn't many prizes for guessing. It was Porto that won at that time. And in the Netherlands, it was Feyenoord. Now, summer of 99 for transfers, guys. Some big movers, some heavy hitters here. So as we always do, we get to this bit when we recap the transfers, especially ones in the late 90s, early 2000s episodes, which funny enough, we're right on the last year of the 90s and the first year of the 2000s for this season. Italian football dominates the headlines when it comes to transfers because it is still the league to be in. Christian Vieri was the biggest mover of the summer, and he'd actually been a bit of a journeyman over the last years. He played for Juventus for a season, Atletico Madrid for a season. He'd been at Lazio for a season, and now he was off to Inter Milan that summer. But I say, when you look at his history, he stays at Inter for a good few years, but he goes through a spell there where he just transfers every single season, one after the other. But he was the big mover. And of course, Nicolas Anelka left Arsenal for Real Madrid that summer. But of course, to replace him, Arsenal went out and got Thierry Henry from Juventus, albeit, if I remember correctly, Henry didn't actually start as a striker at Arsenal. Was actually playing as like a left winger.
Aye.
Yeah, that's right. Aye. Because when he originally came in at Arsenal, he didn't hit the ground running. He didn't become the player that he's known for now. He was struggling for a wee while. Now here's one as well. Andriy Shevchenko, future Ballon d'Or winner, he transferred to AC Milan that summer from Dynamo Kiev because the season that just finished, Dynamo Kiev were a massive surprise package in the Champions League. They were in Arsenal's group, if I remember right, and they beat Arsenal pretty convincingly with Rebrov up front with Shevchenko.
Yes, and did Shevchenko not score a hat-trick at the Bernabeu or something?
I think he did, aye.
Something mental like that. I don't know if it was that season, the season before, but he was a baller, man. What a player.
Aye.
Future Ballon d'Or winner. Battering everyone. It was mad.
They were the surprise package, weren't they, Liam? They're one of the teams that came along, and I just think nobody knew what to expect for them. And I remember the 98-99 season there. They were in Arsenal's group. I think Fiorentina were in Arsenal's group because Arsenal had to play their Champions League games at Wembley. They couldn't play them at Highbury because Highbury didn't meet the standards. But I can remember Arsenal getting done by Shevchenko and Rebrov. But Liam Shevchenko, mate, just what a player. Words can't really describe how good this guy would go on to become.
I think Arshavin was on that team as well, and he ended up going to Arsenal, didn't he? After that,
Oh, he was too young then.
I think a bit too early for Arshavin.
I thought Shevchenko was class, and I know we talked other Bustalgia, but he's the one that talked Massimo Donati into coming to Celtic. He was pals with Dermot Desmond's son, and made the call to Donati and said, "Hey, it's an opportunity. I think you should really take it and go." You know. I think we talked about that on the...
That's insane, though, eh? It's insane.
Was that?
That's insane. Do you know what I mean? That happened. Shevchenko was still in his peak playing powers, and he's just like being an agent for Celtic as well. Fair enough, mate.
Aye.
No, right.
Aye. Pals with Dermot Desmond's son as well, isn't he? Quite a bizarre friendship there. I've seen him at Celtic Park as a Champions League night. I've seen him there with Desmond and co, like coming down from the Kerry Dale suite. Just walked right by me as we're heading like round the park to go up to the executive seats. By Shevchenko's with me. I thought he was there as UEFA ambassador or something. So it was a Champions League night. But no, it turns out he's just pals with Dermot Desmond's son, plays golf with him and tennis and stuff like that. And they're like, what? How did this come to be? Aye, how did that happen?
Now we know where Marian Shved came from.
Well, there's one, yeah.
That's true, by the way.
Wonder. Interesting. But he's I've seen him at Celtic Park a couple of times. And maybe Russell, that's why somebody once upon a time told you that Shevchenko was going to be the Celtic manager. A wee green tick next to it on a WhatsApp message. We won't go into that. Yeah.
Someone's just been feeding him shite as testing ground. Can you trust the wee fella? Shevchenko, come on.
No. Although didn't he manage the Ukraine national team as like his first job in football management? Then he went on to become a politician.
Well, he was juggling between being the mayor or the manager of the country. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a pretty big deal, isn't he? Do you know what I mean?
Isn't one of the Klitschko brothers like a mayor and obviously a professional boxer? He's like the mayor of Kiev and a professional boxer. Is it? There's no Vladimir. It's Vitaly Klitschko. It's the other one. Aye.
Fighting on the front line, supposedly.
Fighting on the front line nowadays. I know. It's mental. All these split jobs that they've got in the Ukraine. There's a football manager, politician, mayor, boxer. Just juggling between the two. No problem at all. But bizarre. But I remember the Shevchenko move to AC Milan, but it was well merited, and obviously it was justified in the end because he was phenomenal what he was going to achieve. Sadly, he went to Chelsea though, and the curse of the number 9 would strike for Shevchenko. He wouldn't be immune to that either. Now, speaking of Chelsea number 9s, a future Chelsea number 9 had a big transfer this summer. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank moved from Leeds to Atletico Madrid. He would play a couple of years in Spain, then come back to Chelsea to replace somebody who we're going to talk about further down this list. Sven-Göran Eriksson's all-conquering Lazio would sign Juan Sebastian Veron this summer. They would go on to win the league in the year 2000. Vincenzo Montella swapped life at Sampdoria for Roma, where he would link up with Del Vecchio. And Batistuta would eventually join Roma as well.
The little aeroplane. Is that what Montella was called, aye?
It was indeed, aye. I think Montella's had a stint as manager as Roma as well in recent years. Didi Hamann, he swapped life at Newcastle for Liverpool. Future Celtic player and a future Celtic manager would link up this summer. Robbie Keane made a move from Wolves to Coventry City to play under Gordon Strachan in this summer. One of the most sought-after talents in English football, Kieran Dyer, surprised many people when he chose Newcastle. However, I believe, racking my brain here, Bobby Robson had a big scene at because Bobby Robson became the Newcastle manager early on in this season. And of course, there's no transfer windows at this point. I think Robson had a massive say in getting them to Newcastle because it was Ruud Gullit started the season as manager, was sacked after a few games. Bobby Robson took over, and Kieran Dyer chose Newcastle. Do you remember all the brouhaha in Kieran Dyer, especially be a champ manager player, Russell? How good Kieran Dyer would go on to become in that game? Oh,
He was such a good player. He was such a really good player anyway. I think, you know, Ipswich Town connection with Bobby Robson probably did play a big part because obviously he's a legend there. And I think Robson had that sort of CV that he could sort of put it up there even against Fergie's at that point in time and sort of go, you know, who do you want to work with? Fair dues to him, do you know what I mean? I'm sure he probably, it could have been different, but hey ho. I bet he had a good few years under Bobby Robson at Newcastle. I know injuries kind of wrecked his career, but he was, I think after his first 2 seasons at Newcastle, he was getting linked to being the first £20 million Premier League player and stuff like that. So,
aye.
it's funny how it all turns out.
Indeed. Now, another big transfer was Edwin van der Sar. He moved to Juventus to fill the void left by Angelo Peruzzi, who went to Inter. And Liam, finally, the other big transfer story. The man that Michael Beale decreed the worst signing in Chelsea's history. He actually made some history that summer because I believe he became the Chelsea's record signing of £10 million when Chris Sutton would move from Blackburn Rovers to Chelsea. It wouldn't be a great season for him, but as we've discussed, it would all work out well for Chris in the end. But yeah, he made some big history that year. When you think of the money Chelsea were able to spend, Liam, in the years since, £10 million was the record at this point, and they forked it out for Chris Sutton.
Yeah, I don't remember like feeling anything about that signing at the time, right? You never had that personal connection with Chris Sutton. Like I knew of Shearer and I knew Sutton had done really well that year. And at that point as well, it seemed as if they were just throwing out a wide net at that point with all the money Chelsea had, that they could just pick and choose. Okay, well, he's the top scorer. We'll take him and we'll throw him in with us. And like, I never seen it as them building a team the way Martin O'Neill built Celtic at that point.
Yeah.
Just loads and loads of revolving door, big name players, and occasionally 4 or 5 of them would click, you know. And I think that was the problem with Sutton, is that he needed a team atmosphere to thrive, right? Some guys wanted a bond with their mates, where I don't think there was probably a lot of bonding in that team. And he's probably way too mouthy to be pals with anybody. So you have to have more of a, you know.
Yeah, he definitely got the personality going into that dressing room. I don't know how well it would have went down with some of them in there, but yeah, this was the season that he would sign for them. They would he'd score 1 league goal and I think 1 goal in Europe. But yeah, it would all work out for him in the end because we would prosper on that one in a year's time. As I mentioned earlier on, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank would come back to England to play for Chelsea to replace Sutton. He would fill the void that Sutton left when he moved up to us. So yeah, it all kind of moves around, you know, sliding doors and all that stuff. But that's how it all worked out in the end in terms of the summer transfers of 1999. Now, what's going on in terms of pop culture and some news headlines that was happening when this season kicked off. So when Celtic did kick off the season with a 5-0 win at Pittodrie on the 1st of August, number one, I wasn't even surprised that this was number one when I looked, because I just knew 1999, it's a year where a lot of, like, you know, Latino-inspired music was number one. It was Livin' La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin was number one. It was like the sound of 1999. It was everywhere. So that was the one. Yeah, Boyzone were number one in the album chart, and the number one film at the box office, if you wanted to go to the cinema that week when the season kicked off, was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And as a Star Wars fan, the less said about that film, the better, because it's rotten. Moving on to music festivals. What's going on in the last Tea in the Park in Glastonbury of the millennium? So the headline acts were Blur and Manic Street Preachers at Tea in the Park. And other big acts that appeared that year include the Stereophonics, Beautiful South, Fun Loving Criminals, Faithless, Placebo, Gomez, Happy Mondays, Reef, Bare Naked Ladies, Travis, Muse, and Fatboy Slim. How does that line up strike you, Russell?
It's strong. I like it. I think loads of good acts there. Do you know what I mean? If they were playing any of these festivals these days, they would get to headline it on nostalgia alone.
Aye.
But I mean, the competition for places, if you like that terminology, is pretty strong there. Do you know what I mean? I think you'd go with a solid 3-5-2. Fun Loving Criminals at the back.
Yeah, man.
Supporters in that lineup. I know Hughie for Fun Loving Criminals. He's a Celtic supporter.
Is he?
Interesting.
Well known, aye. I think he goes for
How did that one come about? Because they're from New York, or definitely American, aren't they, Fun Loving Criminals?
Yeah. It was the same way Everlast used to put all that stuff as well. Everlast are American, right?
Yeah.
Danny Boy O'Connor, the guy that ran the band. So all the Irish iconography came out for him.
Right.
You know?
Gotcha.
Nice. Okay, I'll need to start digging out more fun-loving criminals music then. Suddenly I like them even more now. It's like, yes, I'll listen to more of their tunes. I've got a reason now. And in fact, I think they also appeared at Glastonbury. Just looking at us, yes, they did, because Glastonbury that year was headlined by R.E.M., Magic Preachers, Skunk and Nancy. There's a name that's not came up. I remember Skunk and Nancy in the 1990s, but don't see them coming up in any of these festival lineups.
No, truth. Nice to see a wee bit of variation in the team, Phil.
Indeed, a bit of rotation.
Bare Naked Ladies, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that song, One Week by them?
Yeah.
Right. If we ever get a night out or whatever, right, I'll sing the whole thing and it goes rapid, right? But see, once I've had a few drinks, a few sherbets in me, right, I can do that full thing, man, in time. And it is rapid, fast.
Yeah, it gets faster and faster.
Tragically, I don't even know how I learned it. Probably using a different corner of my brain than I normally can use when I'm sober. But anyway, it was good fun. And I have pulled that party trick out a few times before, just been like, what's he doing?
We need a song for Alistair Johnson. I think it should be a Bare Naked Ladies song, then being a Canadian band.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Right, exactly. That's true.
Better than Nickelback. Come on. Come to the light. Don't go to the dark.
Anything's better than that, to be fair. Anything. So, yeah, I'll happily accept the Bare Naked Ladies song for ourselves. But yeah, try to pen some lyrics to 1 week and relate it to Alistair Johnson. Good luck with that, given how quick the song goes.
I'll get everyone to sing that in the stands.
No, I can't see that one catching on. Can't see it. But yeah, the other big acts that appeared at Glastonbury were Texas, Lady Kravitz, Fun-Loving Criminals were there as well. Beautiful South, Ash, Blondie were there. I guess they had the Legend slot. Cooler Shaker, the Cardigans, and Queens of the Stone Age were there. Now, news headlines in the summer of 1999, that was the summer that Jill Dando was shot on her doorstep. Remember that story? It was the Crime Watch host. She was outside her home in Fulham, and she was shot dead on her doorstep. But her death and funeral happened in the summer of 1999. Also in 1999, it was the year that the Scottish Parliament was established. The building was opened in June of 1999. May 1999, Donald Dewar was elected First Minister. Yep. Here's something I've mentioned before on Bustalgia when we're talking about national stadiums. Because obviously in Scotland, Hampden just literally got a new stand. But down in Wales, they gave them the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, a brand new, state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line, shiny, just-out-the-box stadium, 70-something thousand people. It's still obviously a national stadium, although it's more for the rugby now. The football team did play in the Millennium Stadium for a while, but they've now sort of just moved to Cardiff City Stadium. But in 1999, the Millennium Stadium opened. I think it's now the Principality Stadium. And another football headline as well, big controversial one in the summer of 1999, Manchester United announced that they would not be competing in the FA Cup this coming season because instead they were going to go and play in the FIFA World Club Championship in Brazil that they held in early 2000. Now, we've mentioned this tournament before, Russell and Bustalgia, and I believe it might have been Patrick McLaughlin, he's good with this knowledge, came in and told us that one Ange Postecoglou was a manager of whatever Australian team was at that tournament.
That's right.
Yeah, but I don't think they played Man United, but they did encounter a Mexican team called Necaxa with a certain champ manager legend in their midfield, didn't they?
Alex Aguinaga or something.
That's
like that.
The one, yes,
right?
Alex Aguinaga. That's the guy.
I thought it might be him. What was I going to say? I mean, it's an interesting talking point, though, isn't it? Liam, I want your thoughts. If, right, somehow Celtic found themselves in the midst of an invite to the World Club Championship. Say they'd won the Europa League and the Europa League winners, for whatever reason, have been invited that year. Play along here before anyone comes in the comments going, you don't get in for winning the Europa League, Bhoycie. That's fine. But in this wee game, they do, right? Celtic have got that proposition. It's going to fall around the first round of the Tennant Scotch Cup. Got a decision to make. What would you do?
Oh, I'm going. I'm away. Scottish Cup's not even getting a look in.
Fucking right.
Gone. I mean, yeah, you want to play in the biggest spectacles on earth. You know, that's it. That's what you play for. You're playing for the big games. They're the ones people talk about. They're not going to care if you beat Rangers again or Motherwell or Aberdeen again. Beat them loads of times. I want a big scalp. You know, and that's something I could really get behind.
I couldn't agree more.
Aye.
That's why I'm the same. I'd be like, this is a one-off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know tradition and all that shit, but fuck it for 1 year. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're not going to invite us back. I might petition not to, but Who cares? I would definitely be there.
It was a controversial one at the time, but yeah, you can understand why they did it. But no, incredibly, it just didn't work out too well for them, because usually the World Cup Championship still happens now. Usually the team representing UEFA just turns up and scalps everybody. But I think the format nowadays is they only come in at like the semi-final stage. They get a bye right through to like the second last round. But in this tournament, it was like a wee group stage thing. There was two groups, yeah.
Two groups, and then it became semis and a final. That's how it worked. And if you remember, Vasco da Gama had a certain wee guy, nearly said wee fella there again, a wee guy up top, Liam, 34, 35 years old at this point. Pretty good striker called Romario playing for them. And he was up front with Edmundo, who was a complete diva, but a genius on the ball. And if my memory serves me right, and bear in mind I was like 12, do you know what I mean? If I remember correctly, the two of them tore Man United up. They beat them about 4-1, something like that. Some I don't know. But I think it was a pumping anyway. Big Romario and Edmundo were up front together.
Was he not like nicknamed like the Animal or something like that in Brazilian press? He had like a bit of an unsavoury reputation, yeah?
Oh, he had a mad reputation. He was known to be, he was nuts. Oh, I knew that. Patrick McGoldrick says it was 3-1.
That's Bebeto. Yeah. Bebeto, Romario, Edmundo. Oh, what a forward line. That was World Cup, the very first Bustalgia we did, World Cup 94, mate. The very first one, the first tournament that we remember, but that was Bebeto's celebration.
Remember Romario much, Liam? Wee striker. Loved the wee toe punt.
Remember the World Cup and that, but don't remember any of his club football. But I always loved him playing for Brazil, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Liked a big sparkler, didn't he? They always had a massive gold diamond earring or something. You know? Yeah.
He was class. He was class, but yeah, that Man United team, I think, went there thinking they were going to win that. But I just think it's an interesting conversation in the world of hypotheticals. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would you do the same as Fergie then? And I think Ferguson knew the ramifications of that. He knew it wouldn't go down well. And if Man United are willing to sacrifice their National Cup for that prestige, then I think I would have been all for it, to be honest.
I mean, it may have done some damage in the long run to the actual tournament, because nowadays a lot of the bigger clubs don't really care too much for the League Cup and the FA Cup. When growing up in the for the 90s, now the FA Cup final was always like such a big occasion. But yeah, this one, when this happened, I think it kind of changed their opinion of the FA Cup in a lot of fans' eyes. And then you look at over the years, teams, certain managers fielding reserve teams in these cup games and stuff like that. And it's like, even to this day, it still goes on. Because sadly, the juggernaut as well of the Premier League is just so important to teams with the money that you get for just staying in the division. It's quite sad to see the way it's fell. But yeah, Man U, obviously, they decided to just patch going and playing in the FA Cup to head to Brazil to play the World Cup Championship. And sadly, it didn't go well for them. Now, let's have a wee look, guys, at the old pre-season roundup then. What was Celtic doing going into this coming season, 99-2000? Because, for the third season on a bounce, some of the 98, some of the 97, 98, and now the summer of the 99, we find ourselves in a similar position. We're looking for a new manager. Also, I need to quickly address, Dalglish been coming in constantly. Man United never won a treble, Phil, and you know it. 1999, Man United won Champions League, English Premier League, and the FA Cup. I mean,
come on,
did I imagine
You're better than that. You're better than that, Dalglish.
I mean, have I imagined this? Is this a fever dream?
He maybe just doesn't know. He's just an innocent man. He doesn't know.
There you go.
But yeah, they definitely did in the same season.
Yes, the 99 season. But yeah, going into this one, 99-2000, Celtic, what have they been doing? So yeah, we need a new manager. So after Joseph Venglos didn't quite work out, we've obviously scouted around, and Kenny Dalglish has returned as director of football, and he's bringing with him his former Liverpool teammate, England and Liverpool legend, John Barnes. It's his first managerial job. He's just fresh off of retiring from playing at Newcastle United. So guys, initial thoughts when this happened, because me personally, I was well excited by this. I was well buying into the hype, the buzz outside the stadium. You see the images of them out there waving to the fans that had all gathered. I was well on board with this. This was like exciting and new. Just thinking again how amazing. Again, this is my first lesson on. In hindsight, I would learn good player doesn't necessarily equal good manager. But at that point in time, I was young and naive, and I thought, yeah, man, I'm all on board on this. But Russell, initially, what was your first impression of this duel?
It sounded like a dream team, didn't it, to be fair? I mean, you try and... I'm too young to, at the point in time, to be obsessed with Kenny Dalglish. You know what I mean? My dad definitely was, and he was like, oh, he's coming back. It's a joke. And my memories of Kenny Dalglish at that point were really him lifting the Premier League with Blackburn. That was kind of how I only knew him as. Which, what a slap in the face that is. But, you know, you'll be like, you what? Really? But that, like, at that point in time, that's where I was at. And there was him, and then obviously John Barnes. I'd been watching the Premier League now a couple of years, you know what I mean? Whenever they were on the old Sky, and John Barnes, very familiar face, and it just thought, this sounds, everyone's excited by this. And, of course, like, I just thought, from the year before where it was the unknown Wim Jansen, then you look to this one, familiarity can play such a big role in, you know, determining your sort of mindset on an appointment. You know, well, you know who they are, they're famous, you know, they're huge names, and that can almost draw you in too much rather than looking at things, you know, from a factual point of view and what they've actually, you know, what right they've got to be a manager, in the case of John Barnes. But it looked like a managerial dream team. Obviously, the Liverpool connection between Barnes and Dalglish is massive, and you think, this could work. And if Kenny Dalglish is going to be saying that, you know, Barnes is going to be, I think there was a one point in one of his press conferences, he said he was going to go right to the top as a manager. You kind of take his word for it, don't you? And you're right. There was a hell of a lot of excitement on it at the time. We were the champions after all. We're not going to be taking our foot off the gas or taking any risks. This is the champions making a statement. Is it not, Phil?
Well, yeah, I mean, see, it was, I can remember at the time when it happened, one of my mates who is a Rangers fan, he was kind of laughing at it, and I was like, no, I just couldn't accept that this would go wrong at all. And I'm like, look, there's essentially only two teams in Scotland, right? How wrong can he really get it? So for me, I was all in on it, and I did feel it was going to be you say, Kenny Dalglish, he'd won the English Premier League with Blackburn Rovers, so him coming back, even though he'll be a director of football role, and this was a new thing for us, even though we'd done it with the Jock Brown thing, but he was actually called the general manager, but it's essentially the same kind of format where you've got a guy above who deals with like the contracts and so forth, the football issues. Then you get a guy who's like the head coach. He deals purely with the stuff on the training park. That's what Celtic were going for in the last couple of seasons under McCann with Jock Brown. But this was Kenny Dalglish stepping into that role, direct football. So somebody who he's known very well, playing alongside him at Liverpool, legendary players. But Liam, what was your thoughts? Were you like us? Were you excited, on board with it, or were you like, don't know, actually, this is a big risk?
I was just relieved it wasn't Stuart Baxter.
Stuart Baxter, there's a blast for the past, yeah. Linked to everybody.
Always seemed to be up there. Oh, of course, I was excited. I'm an old guy. I'm a romantic. I like my Celtic to be buzzing and, you know, and active and vibrant. What's more than bringing in an absolute international legend? You know, you play football here in Canada, everybody knows who, you know, guys my age and younger, they all know who Kenny Dalglish is. He was good for Celtic. It's great for Liverpool. It's good for Scotland, you know. And then as to have him coming back as a manager, that's box office. That's what you want for your team, you know. Somebody, I mean, he was not homegrown by any means, but he was still one of us. And I thought that was going to be a good thing. It's like part of the identity of this football club is being able to have that open door so that when somebody does come back, they've got every chance to come back a hero and you wish them well. And it was the same with John Barnes as well. Again, another big name box office player. Yep. Somebody seen before, somebody that was phenomenal as a player, you know. And again, something that little bit different that we do different than everybody else, you know. He's going to be great for us. So I was really optimistic.
I just need to quickly bring this up because you've mentioned him and now it's in my head. Has Stuart Baxter ever actually been seen? Because he's a name that was always flying around at that time. Linked. I don't know what this guy even looks like.
I do.
So, on a movie poster, if somebody doesn't want to be part of the film, he gets the name Alan Smithy. So it might be a union thing within FIFA. You know, if you make an absolute
maybe
just call it Oh, I was Stuart Baxter did that, you know.
Stuart
Or
Baxter.
one of the names in, you know, Peter Lowell's drawer somewhere.
One of those CVs that's filed away for 2019.
Probably exposed for corruption.
Stuart Baxter was linked with jobs in England as well.
He was, yeah. A Scottish guy that managed mostly in places like Scandinavia, but yeah, I always remember his name.
He was Finland manager at one point.
He was, aye.
I can picture him right now. I think he's been a director of football at places as well as my. I don't know what's that connection with him? His name came up loads.
I just remember playing champ manager at that time. He was always a guy that would do that job. So if anyone in the chat has ever seen a sighting anywhere of Stuart Baxter, let us know. Let us know during the chat. I'll keep
and would you take him as a replacement for Ange Postecoglou in 3 years?
I don't even know if he's even still managing, but that name, if when William brought him up, I was like, Stuart Baxter, that name, but I couldn't tell you what he looks like, but I've heard the name plenty of times. But what were we doing in terms of getting ready for the title race, guys? This big title race against Big Advocates, all conquering Rangers side, which were spending money they might not have had, but that's something we'd learn further down the line. But how were we going to cope with it? Well, we actually broke our transfer record that summer, guys. We brought in Israeli midfielder Eyal Berkovic from West Ham, which, again, was another exciting moment, another exciting sign. We've broke our transfer record. I've watched this guy play in the Premier League for the last couple of years via Sky Sports, and I'm like, this guy's a player. So I was really, really excited to get Berkovic on board. Also coming in that summer was obviously Stilian Petrov, who would go on to become very, very good for Celtic by a rocky first season. Speaking of rocky first seasons, Oliver Tabili, yeah, he was signed that summer. Bobby Petter came in, the much maligned. Raphael Felipe Scheidt also joined. And later on in the season, for reasons that we will discuss in a wee while, Ian Wright would also join. But how did those signings grab you, Russell? Especially Berkovic, as I say, breaking our record at the time. And he was an established Premier League talent.
There's buzzing with the signing. I know we'll talk about the games shortly, you know, obviously in the second half, but £5.75 million. I think it looks like a statement of intent, does it not? I thought he was a good one. I mean, the Raphael one, you just get excited because he's Brazilian. Don't know anything about him. There's no YouTube then. Nobody's ever seen him play football before. There's not much to go by, let's be completely honest. I also think when the Ian Wright deal occurred, feeling like it was underwhelming even then. And I remember feeling then, that's not going to work. And that was a real clutching at straws moment. He'd been at West Ham for, I think, over a season now, and it just hadn't worked out. His race was run. Brilliant career, obviously. But maybe not his fault. If he gets an opportunity to go to Celtic because they're in disarray, of course he's going to take that. But a good few years too late on that front, and maybe he probably was one of those players that that as much as he might not have enjoyed his time in Scotland, maybe left with it going, fucking hell. I didn't think it would be as difficult as that, and that you know, that misconception a lot of players think they can. And I don't mean he thought he could just come up here and score loads of goals. I'm sure it was us who put out the Ian Wright call to him, because we were desperate for a forward to replace Henrik. But I wonder if he maybe, not that I give two hoots to be honest with you, but I wonder if he did maybe have a wee bit of a newfound respect for Scottish football, as I think deep down, many players that have done that, you know, that sort of path from England to Scotland in their latter years actually end up finding out that, you know, it ain't as easy as you might think on paper, and you could be in for a bit of a shock if you're not right at it. So, I mean, it's one of those ones. We were in a needs must situation. The transfer kit has been blown by then. There isn't 5 million, 10 million, 100 million to go replace Henrik Larsson, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? And again, the thing is, what Barnes is doing, you could say like it's an old pals act, I think someone saying in the comments, but also you've got to go plenty of England squads, I would imagine, together, plenty of dust ups on the park, you know, playing against each other, seeing each other up in the flesh, probably know each other. Does it necessarily mean it's an old pals act, or I know what he can do? Do you know what I mean? And at 35, you know, Barnes played till he's 36, 37, he's probably going, you know, if I can get him fit Wait till you see how good he could be. He's never had that, that run of games in the last 18 months. I don't think it necessarily needs to be just old pals stuff. I think he would have just been swayed by how good the good version of Ian Wright had been that he'd played up against, in the flesh. You know what I mean?
I think when Ian Wright came in, he was in the unique position of being actually older than the manager. If I remember correctly, when we signed him, that was a stat that was rattled off where Ian Wright was older than John Barnes. Now, Russell, you of course are the dates guy. Is that correct? Is he older than John Barnes?
Oh shit! So Ian Wright would have been born 64, 63. Be very close. Probably born the same year. I would guess they were born in the same year.
Probably be pretty close. Yeah. I just remember in the news it was mentioned that, Wright was in this unique position, if you want to call it that, where he's actually older than his manager. So that does, I remember the time when I heard that story, that does kind of give you the sinking feeling that this is just such a emergency signing, essentially. But when we get to that point, there's also another thing that we could have done that we opted not to do, but we'll talk about that when we get to it, when the Larsson injury comes up. But Liam, in terms of these signings, obviously Berkovic is a standout. In terms of like the money we paid and what he'd established. But yeah, this is the summer that we signed Stilian Petrov. Safe to say he would do all right, eventually.
No bad. We all know the stories. Lennon the Butler, the burger van, the whole bit, Came into Glasgow 19. Cracker. I mean, what a player, legend, Berkovic, I mean, he was more famous for getting kicked in the head by John Hartson.
He did die.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably one of the first things I ever downloaded on the internet was, really? If I could piece it all together, I wonder what happened there. I mean, that was, I think, part of getting rid of him was signing John Hartson, and then he was off. But
that's right. When Hartson came in, that was because he didn't feature much in Neil's first season. He got loaned out, I believe, to Blackburn or Man City, maybe.
Man City. He went and tore it up. I don't know if you know that, but in the Championship, he got something like 15, 20 assists or something.
Jesus.
He was like, apparently he was their best player that season, him and One Chop.
Paulo One Chop. There's a
Paulo One Chop was up top, and Big Berkovic was just, I think I'll be honest, I thought Berkovic had bags of ability. I thought he had bags of it. I could see why they signed him.
No, he was a good one. But in terms of what was going out, bit of a revolving door, because Phil O'Donnell and both Simon Donnelly left for Sheffield Wednesday. Two of them were the best of friends and they went to the same club. During the season, bit of a controversial one, this, because the story goes that he didn't want to leave and he felt he was forced out. Craig Bultley left midway through the upcoming season to go to Derby County. Tosh McKinlay would also depart during the season and end up at Grasshopper Zurich. There's a bizarre transfer. Where did Tosh McKinlay go after Celtic? Ended up in Switzerland playing for Grasshopper. What? Darren Jackson joined Hearts. And Tommy Johnson would spend the first half of this season on loan at Everton. Enrico Annoni hung up his boots as well before the season started. So that was in terms of the going out now, as always do. We do these seasons, what was going on the other side of the city, the spending machine that was Dick Advocaat's Rangers. Well, by their standards, they actually didn't spend that much this summer compared to the first season he had. The only player that they signed of any fee that summer was Michael Moles, who would start pretty well, but would cop a pretty bad injury in a Champions League game against Bayern Munich when Oliver Kahn just decided to come out and do him halfway up the park. Shame that. They also signed Darius Adamchuk on a free transfer for Dundee, but that was only incomings that they brought in the summer. But during the season, they would sign Billy Dodds and Tugai because there was no transfer windows, so they could sign players during it. Heading out Ibrox that summer was Jonas Tern, Stefan Givash, Antti Niemi. There's a name that's came up a few times. Charlie Miller, Ian Ferguson, Derek McInnes, Gabriel Amato would leave during the season, and Colin Hendry also left. So fair amount going out. But yeah, compared to the money that they were spending under Advocaat, that's actually a tame transfer window, I would say, for them. Maybe a sign that maybe all the money wasn't there. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing going on for what was coming down the line, because as we've learned from that era in particular, maybe spending some money that they didn't have. But anyway, that's a story that we've covered actually on Bustalgia 2011-12 season. We've actually went in depth on that one as to what happened there. But this was the real crux of it during this Advocaat era with the ridiculous amounts of spending. Now, in terms of pre-season, how the Celtic warm up for it. So we headed to Norway for pre-season camp, playing a few games against lower league teams, winning all 3 of them. Then we played 2 Premier League teams at Celtic Park. Leeds beat us 2-1, and then we beat Newcastle 2-0 before we headed to Ireland and beat Irish side Bray Wanderers to round off pre-season. Of course, during the pre-season, we had some European qualifiers, which kind of got us a wee taste of what was to come. They played Cwmbran Town from Wales and leathered them 10-0 on aggregate over the 2 legs. But I think, Russell, you were talking to me about this one, saying when you saw the style of playing that, even though it was Cwmbran Town you're playing, you still were like,
excited.
Pretty,
yeah. You start, what was the score down there? 7 or something?
I think it was 6-0 and then 4-0 at Celtic Park.
10-0 I had in my head that we'd got more than 6. But yeah, I mean, I just thought, the start that we'd made, regardless of the opposition, was always going to be important. And then when I actually watched it, you thought, fucking hell, is what everyone obsesses now with: identity, style of play, how's it going to look? And and obviously as Celtic fans, is it the Celtic way? Well, I'd seen from that you can only beat what's in front of you, and I thought, fucking hell, all right, maybe this could be okay. I thought it was an encouraging start.
It certainly was. What about yourself, Liam? The early signs, I say the pre-season friendlies, they're friendlies, you can't really judge it. But in terms of competitive games, they started obviously with the 4-2-2 formation. But yeah, they started with a resounding victory, albeit it's an amateur team. But as Russell says, you can only be what's put in front of you. But yeah, the early signs were it was going to be rock and roll football. It was going to be all guns blazing, essentially, wasn't it?
I like a bit of helter-skelter, so that's it'd be fine. Well, and it looked great. Watching them on the telly every week in Toronto at that point, and it looked like you're settling in for a good season. If all the players stay healthy, wow, what a team you've got! And it looked like already getting wee relationships going and just scoring for fun. Literally.
As Alistair Jackie says, Larsson and Viduka were frightening. Yes, they were, and that's something we'll be getting on in the second part of the show. And as Liam says there, if all those players could stay fit, well, sadly, as we'll be talking about, there's one in particular that, that didn't quite work out for us. But a bad injury there that he would cop that would be a massive hindrance on the season. But we will obviously digest that in the second half of the show. So we're just going up to the hour mark, guys. So I will put in a wee musical interlude. And when we come back, we will now get into the crux of the 99-2000 season. Barnes Ball is incoming.
I mean, you've all that stuff at the start. They won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now. And you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.
And we are back, folks. So yeah, Barnes ball. Well, everyone's like put the word ball at the end of a manager's name nowadays. That's the in thing to do. But yeah, this is the sort of highlight of this season essentially, because a lot of people forget. Everyone remembers how this season ended essentially. Things actually started really well, and you want to talk about a good first impression. It was very, very encouraging. A real air of optimism around it, because yeah, the very first game we were sent up to Pittodrie to play Aberdeen, and we absolutely rattled them 5-0. A game which should kind of set the tone of what was to come for the first sort of quarter of the season anyway, before that injury happened. But Viduka and Larsson on that day, both of them got a brace, and Butchell got the other one, Russell. But yeah, this was a wee taster, a wee sign of things to come with how good Viduka and Larsson. We saw like the season before Viduka and Larsson together under Venglos. It looked quite promising, but it felt like they'd found another level. Starting this season, getting a pre-season under their belt together. But yeah, that first game, they go up to Aberdeen, rattle them. That'd be the story of Aberdeen's season, by the way. We would ragdoll them consistently this season. Absolutely ragdoll them.
And that was the first time, if I remember correctly, it felt like that with Aberdeen. Aberdeen have kind of never really recovered for this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've always found Aberdeen not being a prick, but see if we went to Pittodrie in the last, I don't even know how many years, I've always felt pretty comfortable going up there. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying we've won every single time, but I never have like put it this way. This weekend we play St Mirren. I am more worried, not that I'm particularly worried, but I am more worried about that than I would be going to Pittodrie this weekend. And that would be the same any season. I don't know why. It's weird. The fear factor, we seem to just zap right out of them. Maybe we owe John Barnes one for that, because not that there was a fear factor with him, but I don't know. It does feel like we put our goal difference against them over the season must have been an absolute, like some sort of record for us against any team. I wonder if we've had a better goal difference against any league side before.
And this season, the first 3 league fixtures we played with them, we beat them 5-0, 7-0, and 6-0. I think the last meeting of the season in the league was maybe a 2-0 affair, a quite tame one. But
that up.
Rattled them. That's Ebby Scoldale's Aberdeen. They got to the 2 cup finals this coming season. Yeah, it was that one. But no, Liam, we've done quite a lot of Bustalgia episodes together. We've covered like the Tommy Burns era up and through Janssen and obviously Joseph Venglos. Aberdeen always was quite a tough one. You look at some of the highlight videos we've looked through, doing the research for it. There was games under Tommy Burns in particular. It was always a tough place to go. I've got vivid memories of Ian Jess being a real pain in the backside for us going up to Pittodrie. They were always a tough one, but this game was like a break from the norm heading to Pittodrie. You absolutely layered them 5-0. I say Viduka and Larsson together, a brace each, would be setting the tone for things to come. Oh, he's muted after his... There we go. You're unmuted now, Liam.
Right. I remember leathering him a few years earlier than that. Do you hear me okay?
Aye, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There's never, ever been a panic going to Pittodrie with Aberdeen. Even those bits where we snatch it, you know, like the very last minute winners, you know, like Samaras and stuff years ago. I think it's just one of the things. I think psychological. You know, I think Michael Beale's got to get his motivational speaker up there as well, because that Highland air and the green and white hoops, it just does not work well for them at all, you know. So.
The stats just came up there from Kieran. I can believe this, by the way. As I say, it was 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 in the first 3 league games. 29-0. I wouldn't put that past it being truth, by the way. We absolutely ragdolled them that season.
An interesting trivia question. Who have we got? What season did we get the highest ever aggregate score in the 3-4 times that we played a team in the top flight? I've just got that feeling that season against Aberdeen may well be the record.
It's got to be. It has to be up there. It surely must be up there. That is a ridiculous stat. So you look at this. I don't think they scored many against us this season. They did 25-1. There you go. They got 1 goal against us. My God, that's got to be the biggest.
That's astonishing. That's astonishing. And see, but even if you flip the question as well, and you said, who of Celtic had the highest aggregate goal difference against in one season again, like who they came against, you wouldn't pick Aberdeen.
No, you wouldn't, No, they're always one of the more sort of solid teams outside of the big two.
One of the biggest clubs in the country. Do you know what I mean? You would think it'd be one of the teams that. Do you know what I mean? Well, whatever that means. But you would, you think it'd be fucking. I don't know. Didn't want to pick your fights, boys. Ross County? I don't know.
One of the type of teams, Aberdeen, but that's an astonishing score. But yes, it's Evie Scovedale's Aberdeen, who would also finish bottom of the league this coming season and not get relegated because the SPL had a rule in place about all stadium must be 10,000 seats at least, and Falkirk kept winning the league. And Brockville did not meet the SPL's new lofty standards, therefore they could not get promoted. So that is a bit of weird trivia as well. Aberdeen finished bottom and never got relegated, and that was the loophole that protected them. Insane. And they got to both cup finals this season as well. Bizarre time to be an Aberdeen fan, I'd imagine. But yeah, we followed that up with a 3-0 win over St Johnstone the next week at Celtic Park. So we're 2 games in, 6 points on the board, 8 goals scored, none conceded. But I totally forgot about this, but our first loss of the season would come actually really quickly into the season. We lost 2-1 at Tannadice in the 3rd game of the season. A game that totally bypassed me. I had this impression we were undefeated for like the first 10 games under Barnes, but it turns out a wee sneaky loss to Dundee United was in there. But the way results would pan out is we wouldn't be too far back from Rangers for the first sort of quarter of the season. We got some big wins over the likes of Hearts, beating them 4-0 at Celtic Park, which is never always, a mean feat, to be fair, because Hearts are always a team that come and make it difficult for us. So we beat them 4-0. So we rattled Aberdeen 7-0 in the second meeting with them that season. And that was a game where we got a unique stat as well, where Larsson scored a hat-trick and Viduka scored a hat-trick in the same game. So they got a brace each in the first game against Aberdeen, and then followed up with a hat-trick each in the second meeting against Aberdeen. That's ridiculous stats.
That is wild. That's when you know a partnership's really... running amok as well when you get stats like that. Do you know what I mean? 2 extremely good players. Henrik's a different stratosphere, but Viduka, for all his flaws, was a brilliant footballer. That I don't think there's much getting away for that. Again, there'll just be always one of those what if stories.
It would be, but after 8 league games, guys, we'd won 7 and lost 1. We had 27 goals scored, 4 conceded. Viduka was on 9 goals. Larsson was on 7. That was after 8. So Rangers in their 9th fixture, because we were a game behind. I don't know what had happened for us to be a game behind, or something must have got postponed somewhere. But yeah, we ended up being 1 game out. So there's the 3-point gap. We kept looking at, well, we've got a game in hand, so we can make it up there. But Rangers would actually draw their 9th fixture of the season, drawing 1 each at Kilmarnock on the same day that we beat Aberdeen 7-0, so it put us into 1 point behind them with a game against Rangers looming in the very near future. But unfortunately, as Celtic appeared to now be getting some serious momentum behind them, things were about to go wrong. The train was definitely about to get derailed, unfortunately, and that would all happen in a UEFA Cup tie in France, because unfortunately with Celtic, and especially this season, it never rains, it pours. When one thing went wrong, it really began to go wrong. Things would unravel. So I say after the 7-0 game against Aberdeen, we're on a high, which is an amazing result. Our next fixture is a UEFA Cup tie against Lyon from France. So far in the competition, we've obviously brushed aside Cumbrian Town, 10-0 on aggregate, and we also beat Hapoel Tel Aviv in the next round to get through to this stage. Because this is the point where the UEFA Cup is all knockout. There's no group stages like the Europa League now. So we travel to France 20 minutes into the game, or just under 20 minutes into the game at the Stade de Gelderland. Henrik Larsson presses a defender who dwells on the ball to a guy by the name of Serge Blanc. Don't know if he's related to Laurent Blanc, but anyway, that was the name of the defender, who he's looking to sort of pass it away and kind of realises there's no pass on, turns away, Larsson chases him and closes him down. The two of them seem to collide and both go to ground, but Larsson seems to fall awkwardly. Initially, you can see in the real-time pictures, the way he fell does look a bit unnatural. And then you see, well, you don't even need to see the replay, because I've actually went back and watched the footage the other day doing the research for this. And if you're a squeamish person, it's not one you enjoy. But even in real time, you see the referee walking over to him, and the referee realises what's happened and he's calling for a stretcher. But yeah, Larsson's leg is just in shot, and it's like that, like sitting bent. And it's like, I can remember watching it in real time during the 1980s and seeing that, and right away your heart sunk, because you knew that's broken. he's not going to be playing for a while. Of all the players for it to happen to, of all of them it would be easily the best player in the team. But yeah, Russell, this was the beginning of this would be the trigger point for things to begin to go wrong. This injury to Henrik, but brutal to say the least.
It was an astonishing moment in the season. It is the turning point of that campaign. I am in no doubt. Many will point to Inverness, and we'll talk about that, of course, because you've got to. But it's not. That was the final nail in the coffin, Inverness, really. I'd probably forced a decision to be made that was going to be made anyway, right? So that maybe just brought that, the decision that was inevitable into sharper focus, whereas the Henrik one came on the backdrop of, as you've just described there, an extremely positive start. In fact, 27 goals in the first 8 games is better than, a positive start. That's frightening numbers for a brand new manager with a new, in his first gig in management. It's Celtic with a few new players mixed in there as well. He has took to this extremely well. You'd be thinking, fucking hell, this guy must have something about him. You'd be buzzing. Yeah, I've got to be honest. I think the Henrik injury, I remember watching it in the living room kind of being like that. It was horrible. And you knew at the time, even I was 10, 11, 12 then, but I had a grip on what's going on. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like somebody dafty just watching guys running about playing football. I was taking it all in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But even then, it felt like this is a big moment in time here. This is huge. Do you know what I mean? And whilst you think, it's a big moment, not in a good way. You're thinking, this is a good moment, and my heart's just sunk. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the King of Kings. And to be totally honest with you, the leg break itself at the time, I think it's came out since the shin pad makes it look worse. Did not know that then. You were just looking at that as, his legs like that. Do you know what I mean? And I'd never really seen an injury on the telly as bad as that from as many angles as that. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like they banned, after the day of 9/11, they stopped everyone on TV showing the footage of the planes. Then he stopped showing the footage of Henrik Larsson's leg break because that is I can't even tell you that sort of thing, man. That's traumatizing.
Nowadays, in games, are very, very sensitive to if there's a leg break on a player, they'll try and not show you the close-ups. The last one I can remember where they unfortunately ran a replay a few times was the Arsenal striker Eduardo against Birmingham. That is horrendous, that injury. That is one of the worst. And I think that's the last one I can remember where they, for some reason, felt compelled to keep running replays, and it's stop showing his ankle snapping in two. Honestly, horrendous.
I'll give you the closest one I've seen to it was just recently, that Craig Gordon one.
Oh yeah, Craig Gordon,
his legs going backwards at a right angle. Do you know what I mean? And do you know the funny thing is, he's back and I see doing some sort of work in the gym and that, and brilliant, by the way. Good on him at 40 years old.
Yeah.
But you just wonder, in this really strange take that I've got here, is it the break being that clean, almost I don't know, does that help?
I've heard that theory before.
I've never broken a bone in my life. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not trying to play it down or anything. But you just wonder if, when you look at that, you just go, how could he ever come back better? That is literally almost impossible for that moment in time. And when you go back to the actual, the consequences for the season, I think John Barnes has commented on it before, or since, sorry, I should say, obviously with the benefit of hindsight, but I do think there's an element of truth when he says, I knew we were done for when that happened. I knew the season wasn't going to go well. And of course you're going to say that now.
Yeah.
Right? And you can be cynical about that. But I also think you have to also bow to someone who's watching him in training every day, let alone on match day. We're scoring the goals that we are and how instrumental Henrik is and all that. When you see an injury as bad as that, where your own two eyes, only a matter of yards in front of you, I think you would go, this isn't good for the season. In fact, this is worse than not good for the season. Do you know what I mean?
Aye. Now, there's a question up here, William. I'm going to put it to you. I'm going to put the $1 million question on you from Kieran, asking about if Larsson didn't break his leg, hypothetically, how do you think our season would have went? Do you think he could have been the spearhead to lead us on to some sort of glory that season. With the way things started, but keep in mind we would lose a lot of goals, and it wouldn't be the attacker's fault, it would be the defence fault, with Larsson being on the park, score enough goals to make up for some of the calamitous defending that would come. But it's one of these, what if type of scenarios where if Larsson didn't be how do you think, Liam, the season would have went?
The guy voted the best Celtic player of all time by everybody of our generations. I'd say the season went really well. I mean, look at the leadership he provides on the park. When people talk now, when O'Neill brings the players out and stuff, and they talk about the leadership on the field that Larsson did. He was one of these watch and learn type guys. No talking, watch me. I'm going to do it. So to miss
that, Liam.
That's more than just missing your top goal scorer or a really good partner or a really good striker. You're missing a talisman. I mean, how many times you wanted to watch Celtic and you find out the King's not playing? Never happened a lot, but when it was just like, oh, okay, it's not going to be the same experience today, is it? So I mean, I think things would have been very, very different. I think that might have been the gel that even got more out of Ian Wright, got more out of Mark Viduka. All of a sudden, you've got a chance like Chris Sutton of that, and the two of them, and then and remember as well, because that was him basically away from training as well. So you don't get those Henrik insights and stuff that you've heard people like Ronaldinho and Thierry Henry talking about. So it would be different.
He makes everyone better around him. That's the thing. Everyone around him is a better player. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, he's just you can't really articulate. Do you know what I mean? Like the deficit it has on a team. Taking someone like Henrik out. He's not just. I know what Charles Smith's saying in the commentary. He's saying you're talking about 30 goals out your team, and it's like you're right, but he's so much more than that as well. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, he is. It's I say with in terms of the defensive quality, I think he probably would have scored enough goals to make up for any defensive errors, and I think just the whole mentality around the team would have just been better with him being there. It would cast a sort of dark cloud over the team. You see that happen to one of your teammates, obviously the best player in the team as well. It's also going to have a bearing, but yeah, this would be the trigger point for things to begin to spiral. And of course, as I said earlier on, the player that he tackles or he goes to win the ball off, a boy named Serge Blanc, ends up scoring the winning goal on the night as well. So if that wasn't bad enough that he was involved in, and don't get me wrong, the player, it's an accidental thing. He's not even, it's Larsson's studs appear to get caught in the ground. The boy Blanc hasn't actually stuck a bad tackle on him or anything, but he happened to be the player that Larsson was pressing to try and win the ball off of, and he ends up scoring the winning goal on the night. And yeah, Leon would beat us in the second leg as well at Celtic Park and knock us out of the UEFA Cup at the second round. Now, of course, Celtic will now have to adapt to life without Larsson for the foreseeable future. And the first game right after the leg break, we would scrape by St Johnstone at McDiarmid Park. Morten Vickers scored a late winner. But here was a few options, because again, as I said earlier on, the transfer window wasn't a thing. There wasn't a summer and a winter window. You can move players around basically at your own will during the season. And one of the options that was on the table at the time was, I mentioned earlier on, Tommy Johnson was out on loan to Everton. Celtic would opt not to end his loan early and bring him back. They would bring him back later on, and he would, of course, have a moment later in the season where we would pick up one trophy and he would score. But that was an option that was on the table, but the club opted not to bring Johnson back.
I think that's strange.
Yeah. Stan Collymore neame came up as well. Again, a Liverpool link with John Barnes. His name came up. We talked about Martin and Neil being linked to him, but apparently he was also linked beforehand. But that never came to anything. In the end, though, we did opt for Ian Wright, who would come in on what initially was a short-term deal. It wasn't even to the end of the season. It was just described as a short-term deal. And lo and behold, I think he pretty much held that to exactly that, because he was here for a very short term, maybe just a few months, and then he was away again. But yeah, that's the option we went for. So we had Tommy Johnson, who we could have recalled, and we opted not to at that time. We would wait a wee while and bring him back eventually. I don't know if that was a Kenny Dalglish decision or whatnot, but he does obviously appear in the second half of the season. But we're in that position, Russell, and obviously it's a hard one to call. What do you think would have been the right idea? To go out and get a new striker, or would you just recall Johnson?
Well, it's tricky because you've got to back the manager. At the end of the day, he's made the decision on Tommy Johnson. I think cost us about £2.5–3 million when he first joined. But you've got to back your manager as well. And if he's got rid of him as one of his first sort of transfer bits of business, and it's out on a loan, this is before you would have got a loan fee or anything like that for him, it would have been merely a splitting of the wages, if you like. So he's still probably costing Celtic money every week. It wouldn't have been like Everton took over the full wage. No way. So you look at it that way and you go, well, quite clearly Barnes doesn't rate this guy, and there's no point in then thrusting him back upon him.
Yeah.
Not that kind of thrusting. But do you know what I mean? You don't want to just force a player back into the rails. However, like I said at the start, just to flip that a wee bit, we were in a needs-must situation. You've spent your transfer budget.
Yep.
We've got a player on the books we can recall. You know, he scored goals up here already. Like, I don't know. He's probably got fit down at Everton as well. He's probably had a wee bit of game time there. I don't know. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're comparing, you know, just different stratospheres here. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's Tommy Johnson, Ian Wright, or Doc Cotton, it doesn't make any fucking odds. Do you know what I mean? They're going to have similar effects compared to what the King of Kings is going to have.
Of course.
But with the Ian Wright thing, the only thing I would say about that, and this is not Ian Wright's fault as such, but he was already now moulding into TV celebrity, you know, the
Chicken Tonight. Yep.
And because of his sort of box office name, if not any longer box office ability on the park, then comes with it this huge amount of focus, this huge amount of attention on him, and his sideshow is now developed on what is a season we're trying to just keep glued together without the King of Kings. And I think when you look back at that, that was also never going to be beneficial to trying to achieve something that year. There was too much that came with Ian Wright. And I'm not saying that's because of bad stuff on Ian Wright or anything like that. I just mean he was a sort of CD list celebrity in British TV by then. Do you know what I mean? Like he's going to bring, and as well as obviously his reputation down south, Arsenal's record ever goal scorer, combine all that, the focus on him was going to be way OTT and almost a distraction. And I just think from then on, that decision probably doesn't look all that great now.
No, definitely does not. He would sign just in time for the game against Motherwell, but we ended up. This was the beginning of the downward spiral, as I say, with the stuttering for him. But yeah, we would lose to Motherwell at home, but he would get a goal, Ian Wright, in a 5-1 victory that would follow against Kilmarnock. And I think from watching highlights, I'm sure he scores a goal and he gets disallowed for offside. He wants to do, I think his celebration was, am I thinking of the Aberdeen game where he does the celebration where he just kind of runs and face plants? I might be the Aberdeen game, but I can remember that he scores against Kilmarnock and it get disallowed. But it's one of those ones where he's already ran off and celebrated, done his elaborate celebration, and then it's like, no, it was offside. But then he does get his goal eventually in a 5-1 victory against them. Viduka scored a hat-trick that day. So again, even with Larsson though there, Viduka seems to be taking it on at least and scoring a hat-trick in that one. But then, of course, the first Glasgow derby is looming at this point, Liam. We're heading to Ibrox. And as I said in the title for this section, it never rains, it pours. Things are about to go very wrong again. Celtic got off to a horrendous start in this game at Ibrox. Jonathan Johansson put Rangers ahead early on. But Celtic rallied. Jonathan Johansson. He went on done all right at Charlton, remember? Maybe played the bad for...
I remember thinking he looked a better player at Charlton than he ever did for Rangers.
Aye. He seemed to be a totally different player down south, but I remember him having a decent record.
What other Scottish club did he play for?
Oh, I cannot.
Came back to Scotland.
Jonathan Johansson. Again, I'm just going to take a punt and say Dundee United. Just a guess.
Incorrect, but it's not a bad guess. Liam.
Oh.
Have a stab at it.
Hearts.
Oh, even closer. Hibs. He played for Hibs. Jonathan Johansson. Am I right in thinking, did he manage a team in the Scottish Championship as well? Was he in charge of Morton or something? Am I making that completely up? Edit that out if I am.
He might very well have. I have no idea. Keeping up in Jonathan Johansson's career is not something I've done much, but yes, he might very well have.
I'm going off in tangents. Sorry, mate.
That's all right, mate. That's all right. But yeah, he puts them ahead. But Celtic do rally, Liam, and get themselves ahead. Berkovic scores a brace just a few minutes before half time. Berkovic scores to put his 2-1 up, and him and Ian Wright indulging the old chicken tonight celebration. Now you're thinking, we've scored 2 or 3 minutes before half time. Perfect, great time to score. Just see it out to the break and then we can sort of collect ourselves. But again, it doesn't rain, it pours, because a quite surreal moment, Liam, happened where Rangers were on the attack. Jorg Albertz broke into the Celtic box and Paul Lambert slide tackles him. Appears to come away with the ball. It's a strong tackle, but he comes away with the ball. Albertz falls and knees Paul Lambert in the face, knocks his teeth out, and Rangers get a penalty for it. So now we've lost Henrik Larsson. We're now going to lose Paul Lambert with a broken jaw. Andy lost some of his teeth, didn't he? And now obviously Rangers have got a penalty as well. Right on half time, after we take the lead, we've got a chance just go in half time 2-1. We can gather our thoughts. But no, up steps Jorg Albertz and he scores said penalty. And if I remember right as well, just to add insult to injury, as Paul Lambert was getting stretchered off, he also got booked as well for that tackle.
Absolutely incredible. Talk about your heart sinking. It was like Larsson again. You're watching one of your best players and everybody could see it. They slowed it down. And Albert really drives his knee into his face. You know, it was with force. You know, it's like surprised he didn't break his jaw as well. But my God,
he does. I think it is a broken jaw.
And then watching the referee gave the captain a penalty. Oh, just at that point, it ruined the rest of the game for me. At that point, it's just you ever watch the games and it's no good watch. It was one of them, and it was just like left the pub feeling just like, oh, that was shite. That was absolutely shit. Is this Scottish football? Is this what I'm watching? You know, and so we've had a history of decisions like that. But that's one of the ones that's up there as one of the most ludicrous decisions I've ever seen given against Celtic. I mean, the pitch was coming apart as well. I mean, it wasn't like he was sliding, trying to tackle him in a sense. It's like it wasn't good footing in that thing. And anyway, less said about that part, the better.
I think that's up there in the top 3 angriest I'd ever seen my dad at the football. And that's saying something, do you know what I mean? Like, he was going mental. And like, do you know how sore that would be to like lose your teeth? Oh my, like, nut. I snapped half my front tooth in Munich. Oktoberfest. I had food poisoning, right? Started feeling faint in the hotel room. That's what it was. Nobody believes me, but it was. And I fucking woke up under the bathroom sink, and I was like, oh! And I was like a wee bit. I was like, you're not like for a bad dream. And I'm like, I could feel the gap in my. I'm like, no way. Looked in the mirror, half my fucking front tooth's out, and there's a wee bit of the nerve out. And I mean, it was like so. See for like 2, 3 your teeth to come out in the winter, but I think that would knock me out. That sort of pain, I would just be like, oof, I'm out. Do you know? It'd be agony, so sore. As he's looking back like that, the referee's pointing at the penalty spot. He must have been like, what fucking crazy drugs are you taking? Do you know what I mean? What is this?
Russell, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. This is something you asked for me to look into more for Bustalgia episodes. Do you remember the Only an Excuse sketch that year about this incident?
Oh, go on. I know he's
Jonathan Watts has done up as Paul Lambert in the hospital, and he's all covered in bandages and mumbling away. And Dick Advocat comes in with like flowers, and he's like, Paul, are you okay? And he's like just kind of nodding and mumbling away, and then he goes, good, because you're a disgrace. You should have been sent off. You're an absolute disgrace.
That's so good. That's so good. I know exactly the way you're talking about. But and again, I always think like with the Only Excuse stuff, there's always like an underlying thing in that, like under their jokes, and that is him saying, "How the fuck was that a penalty?" He's Jonathan Watts is a big Rangers fan. He doesn't hide it, but you know, I think when he takes the piss with the jokes, like he gets to he's getting to like the crux of it. Do you know what I mean? Under the radar and undeniably, like it's just a strange take. Do you know what I mean? All round.
It's just one of the ones that always stands out for me in the Only an Excuse golden days. The Paul Lambert one where Advocate's like, you're a disgrace. You should have been sent off for it. So it always stands out for me. But yeah, the Rangers game, say, Liam, you're right, totally deflating to lose a goal in that manner right on half time. And in the second half, Amoruso scores and Gabriel Amato scores. We end up losing 4-2. And that was the first Glasgow derby that season. Not exactly the start John Barnes would have wanted in that fixture. But despite a late winning goal at Tynecastle, after that game, Celtic would stumble again. They would lose at Motherwell 3-2 in the next fixture, and it was all beginning to fall apart. Celtic would win the next 3 games on the bounce, which would include yet another handsome victory over Aberdeen 6-0. Is this the game when Morton Vicost does a Rabona cross? Is it that game?
We just start calling this fixture the token. The
token
5-0 gubbing at Aberdeen.
Yeah. Aye. But yeah, I think this is the game Morton Vicost does a Rabona cross, if I remember correctly. Or is that under Martin and Neil? But it's definitely that NTL kit that I can see it happening in. But I'm sure it's this game, but Vicost, just pure gallus, a Rabona cross, and I think we scored off of it as well. But yeah, we beat them 6-0. Meaning that, as I say, at that point in time, our aggregate for our games against Aberdeen were 5-0, 7-0, 6-0. So we've got another game looming against, the Rabona. It was that one. Yeah, I can envision that NTL kit, but I didn't know if it was the O'Neill season after it because we had the same kit.
Receth didn't survive under O'Neill, so it must have been...
Vicost, not Receth.
Oh, Vicost, I beg your pardon. Why did I think you said Receth? That's why I couldn't even picture it. I know the exact goal you're talking about. Aye, that was that was this season.
It was that season.
Aye,
it was.
Definitely.
Aye.
Oh, I can see it now. I was trying to picture Vida Receth. I'm like, he's really landed on his ass.
Vida Receth. That'd be something. That would turn up for the books if he did a Rabona cross. But after those victories, I say we've put ourselves in a position where we're 4 points behind Rangers. We've got another fixture coming up against them on December the 27th, and it's the last game of the Millennium as well, because we've also got the January break coming up, which I believe would have been the... Was this the first January break? Did they do one in the first season of the SPL? I can't even mind if they did. But yeah, we've got a January break coming up. We won't play for 3 weeks. But yeah, this is the last fixture for them. So it's the last fixture of the Millennium at Celtic Park between Celtic and Rangers. The result that would come from this game and the 3 that followed it, though, would, of course, spell the end for John Barnes. Because, this game against Rangers is one of the most mental games I have ever seen. We threw everything at them that day. Everything. We were by far and away the better team. But much like the story, it's funny that this is the last game of the millennium, the century, the decade, the last game of the 90s. And what was one of the things that was typical in Celtic Rangers fixtures in the 90s? Celtic would throw everything at Rangers. They'd try everything, but they just couldn't get the job done. And this was one of those games. Viduka put us ahead. Billy Dodds equalised not long after. Celtic hit the crossbar, I believe, 4 times in this game. If it wasn't the crossbar, maybe the post as well, but they definitely hit the framework of the goal 4 times.
Madness.
They did everything in their power to win this game, and it was just one of those days where there was just an aura around the goal or something where the ball would just not go in and just not fall away. And sadly, we couldn't get the win, and Rangers, it probably felt like a victory for them at the end. They maintained a 4-point gap with a game in hand going into the January break. But Liam, do you remember much about this game? See, we hit the bar multiple times in the game, and it was just like, it just encapsulated that fixture at that time where we were always so unlucky against them, and this was another one.
It was shades of Gorham again as well, Keeper did everything, Well, I mean, they're hard. New Year's Day games, you always think form goes out the window, and, I thought we could have snatched something there. If we did, I thought we might have had enough to turn the season around. At the end, I remember just leaving that feeling very, very down at that point. All the hope was just, everything you had was just being slowly removed. Larsson, Lambert was out long term, It wasn't a good time. Not a great way to start the millennium, was it?
No, definitely no.
Interestingly, I'm now thinking, like I always do this in the old Bustalgia, just put it in modern terms, Phil, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been 9 points clear for a considerable period of time now.
Yep.
13 league games, something like that. Takes you back to what? Early January?
No, before the World Cup. It was the World Cup break before that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. When apparently there was still, we're all sitting, because we're, I don't know. I mean, you look at that there and you go 4 points behind, albeit they've got a game in hand, but they still need to win it. That would only take you up to 7, but we considered it, that's it, done. We're out. That's it. They've won it.
Yeah.
And yet the 9 points clear were, counting our chickens too early and stuff like that when we were 9 points. I mean, it's funny when you compare it though, do you know what I mean? Because our gap is actually far more compelling right now when you add the goal difference to it right now than what that gap is there. But I completely agree with what Liam's saying. It felt like that knocked the stuffing out of us, and it felt like, well, we won't catch them now. And it's still only 4 points, actually, legitimately 4 points, albeit they've got the game in hand.
Yeah, it's weird as well that there's moments in time in Celtic's history where things just seem to mirror each other. And another season that I've not covered yet, the Tony Mowbray season. I remember as well, before the January break, we had a game against Rangers at Celtic Park and we drew 1-1 where we threw everything at them and we couldn't get it done. They drew 1-1 that day. But I think around about that time as well, they had like a 7-point gap as well. And a lot of fans were conceding that that's it. Even though the Robbie Keane signing happened and all that, I'm sure it was when we get to the Mowbray season, we'll look at it. But I do find it quite weird that both of them had a very similar result against Rangers about the same time of the year and had a similar gap behind Rangers. And it's weird looking back at that one. So that's one we'll cross when we get to it. But yeah, the terms of the gap at this point, there's still two games to play against them at this point. We've just gave them a pretty good, we've played pretty well against them. The next game would be at Celtic Park as well. So obviously a fixture has been moved around to have 2 Celtic Park fixtures back to back against them. But if we played that well against them and it just didn't fall away, then you'd be able to think maybe there's still a chance here. By the way, it's only 4 points. As you say, they've still got to win said game in hand. So yeah, it's not outside the realms of possibility at this point in time. But yeah, as we'll find out very, very soon, it's not going to go that way, unfortunately. It would all fall apart because after the January break, we would come back and we would draw with Kilmarnock. So that further intensified pressure on John Barnes. And then in the next league game, we'd play Hearts at Celtic Park. We'd race into a 2-goal lead and Hearts would come back and beat us 3-2, scoring a late winner through Gary Naismith. I can remember. And that one, I was listening to the radio at the time, and it was one of those ones where we were cruising. Absolutely no problem at all. And yeah, Colin Cameron and Gary Naismith done the damage against us, ended up beating us 3-2. Yeah. That was on the 5th of February 2000, just a matter of days before what would be D-Day for John Barnes. But here's a quote from John Barnes after the Hearts defeat, which kind of was a bit of foreshadowing that the writing's on the wall here. He's definitely sort of lost the dressing room and lost his way. He said, "We went ahead playing as a team, but then we started to perform as individuals. My players began trying to be over-elaborate. If Rangers win tomorrow, the championship now becomes more difficult by the day if we continue to play like this. In fact, we'll be lucky to even finish second." That was John Barnes' words after the Hearts game. And let's say we're in a position at that point where, yeah, we've dropped some silly points here, but we've still got 2 games to go against them at that point in time.
Does that not sound like a manager, Liam, in his first full season in management and maybe just talking a bit too much down the microphone?
Thank God he didn't have the same access to social media as somebody else we know.
Yeah.
Probably would have talked himself out of it. Sounds like communication was his problem, It just lost the dressing room, innit? I mean, you could feel at that point, this isn't working, and you didn't want to pull the plug and all that because I don't like sacking managers early. It's funny. My memories was he lasted a lot less. I'm surprised he lasted this long. Like it was this long. In my memory, I thought he was gone in November, December. I didn't realise it was that much later. So he did have a run at it, But disappointed.
Probably Liam, the January break probably.
That's right.
Got him some time. You go out an extra month essentially when, realistically the wheels were.
But here's the debate then: is that not when you make the fucking decision?
Well, that's true.
I never really understood this. Do you know what I mean? If you've got the break there, then if you've got that doubt and you're thinking, we'll give him a couple of games after the winter break. So then you're not going to be in situ where you can get someone in who's going to have any sort of quality time with the players to have a go again. And the league's not completely done by this point. You could have a real bounce to the manager, and the best chance he's got of having that bounce is if he's afforded that couple of weeks in that break where the shutdown occurs, and you just go, look, I know he's meant to be off, but you're going to need to come in, and you can all meet me. We'll get to know each other. We'll have it all out. We're going to work out where the seasons went wrong, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do with you. You need those sorts of windows of opportunity to do it. Then, see, for me, if you're not going to do it in that window, I would just let him play out to the end of the season and see where we wind up.
Aye, may as well, would I?
Kieran McFadden was just on there making a point, and he said it earlier as well. And I agree with him. It's like, I think Dalglish should have done more at that point. That's where you wanted this figurehead, this talent, an icon of Celtic Football Club. To at that point, if you've lost the dressing room because you can't communicate with the players, Dalglish would be the ideal guy to go in and just sort of help build a bridge so that respect, that trust is all back built up again. And I think, I don't know, maybe Kenny was just enjoyed being back in Glasgow too much. It's too comfortable for him, and you get too casual, and casualness causes casualties. And
casualties, I like that.
That is indeed true. And San Francisco, yes, I'm glad we won at the weekend. But yeah, as I said at the start, I was going to look at these types of seasons. I've done a lot of good seasons. I need to start getting into the nitty-gritty of some of the bad ones. But we're almost there. We're halfway through.
Don't worry about that. It's good to reflect. I always think hindsight's a good thing as well, when you can look at how it all came about and the reflections. When I watched all the news the news pieces at the time when we've sacked Barnes, that was all compiled in one YouTube video. And it's quite interesting because a lot of it involved the old microphone to handing it to the fans outside the ground and what they're taking. They actually echo what Liam's saying there. A lot of the fans were sort of saying Dalglish should have went as well.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? That seemed to be the vibe. And I mean, I don't know. I just think that, that position he was in was an interesting one, because who gets the final say on transfers? How much is he responsible for it? What point is he actually allowed to step in? What is his remit in this job, and how comfortable is he actually in it? I don't know.
There's a lot of the same questions we were asking about Jock Brown when Jock Brown was in that general manager role. It was a lot of the same questions. Well, what exactly is your role? What did he do? So it felt like history repeating itself again at this time, where there's a problem in the chain of command at Celtic, board problems, they escalating all the way down to the pitch. And it's like, well, what a shock.
Just Monty, I didn't mean headlines, because it was like little clips of like Scotland Today. It's like wee pieces, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like news pieces, not just like headlines on the screen. It was like Shireen Nanjani and that going like, welcome to Scotland Today, that Celtic manager's been sacked, and then they would cut to whoever the interviews were, Chip Young and that was
Martin Geisler.
Martin Geisler, that was what I was trying to think of there. Well done. So that's what I was trying to think of there. Just read my mind.
Well, I like that you used the word headlines there, because Russell, I do like a seamless link, because we've now reached that point where we need to talk about headlines, a particular headline. So after the Hearts game, obviously, say we've lost that game, Rangers wouldn't actually win the next league game. They would draw with Hibs, but at the end of the day, Rangers were now 10 points in front in the league. But it wouldn't be a league result that would spell the end for John Barnes, because on February the 8th, just a few days after that disastrous Hearts game, it happened. Celtic would be playing second division Inverness Caledonian Thistle, who at that time in my life, I genuinely had never even heard of them. I didn't even know who they were. I was only 14 or 15 at that point, and I had no idea who Inverness Caledonian Thistle even were. But I certainly did by the end of this game. They were playing them at Celtic Park. The game had actually got rearranged because of storm damage. During the weekend it was maybe played, there'd been like serious gale force winds in Glasgow and caused a bit of damage to the stadium. So the game got put back a wee while, maybe like a couple of weeks. So we played them in a midweek game, a cold February midweek against a second division team. We were kind of struggling anyway, so the crowd wasn't even that strong neither. And of course, the headline that would last forever, Super Caley go ballistic, Celtic are atrocious, would be coined, because sensationally, this Celtic team somehow managed to lose 3-1. We were a goal down. Mark Burchell got us back into it with an equaliser pretty swift, and you think, right, no more messing about here, Celtic. Let's get it done. But not. They would be 2-1 up at half-time. And as the story goes, and Ian Wright has talked about this in interviews and years gone by, where he walked in at half-time, the team all come in trudging. Mark Viduka walks in with his boots and throws him at the ground and goes, fuck this. And Viduka just decides, I'm not going out there in the second half. And a blazing argument breaks out between John Barnes and Mark Viduka in front of all the players. And I say Ian Wright said that for all the characters he's played with in his career, he's never seen anything like this before. But yeah, Mark Viduka basically just goes on a sort of self-imposed strike, like, I'm not going out there. And Barnes just wasn't able to change his mind or find the power to send him out there. And yeah, Mark Viduka decided not to go out. Second half, we lose another goal and it ends 3-1 to Inverness. And as Paul Lambert has described on, I think it's on the Celtic History DVD, when him and his wife left the stadium that night, there were a lot of fans waiting for them outside. He was genuinely like to his wife, I don't know if we're going to get out of here alive. So yeah, it was quite a horrendous atmosphere leaving the stadium that night. But yeah, Russell, incredible. Inverness Caley Thistle, forever written into Celtic folklore. Whenever we now play them, that fixture, that headline always gets brought up. That fixture is always forever just in the folklore now. But couldn't get any lower, could it really?
I've got 2 words for you, Phil.
Fuck that. Well, that's what Mark Viduka said.
I've had that lined up all week.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, some patter, Bhoycie, some patter, son. I mean, just the thing is with that, and I mean, I'm not going to make excuses for Viduka doing it, but you cannot deny this must be something that's been brewing for a while and needed managed like earlier. Do you know what I mean? Like, because the reality is, no player as their go-to, if they just like for the first time they've been pissed off, goes, it's not going to go at half-time tonight. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's something that has been obviously building. There's obviously a bit of friction between the two of them. There's been problems underlying for a long time. I am not justifying what Viduka's done, but I think when you look at it, how is a player going to think that could be it? Maybe Viduka thinks a wee bit differently than most, and I get that. But I also think that's a last chance. That's not last chance, a last ditch thing to do. Do you know what I mean? That is literally like, it's just career suicide. Do you know what I mean? And you're going, well, how does it get to that stage? That tells me this has been going on for weeks, if not months, between the two of them. And it's came to a head when the manager needed him most. He already had made his mind up. When the manager needs me, I'm going to, tell him to F off. And it's just a wee bit of me that's like, a wee bit of me with that goes, that situation in isolation, shocking, right? Shocking what Viduka's done. But I can't help but think, what's got us here? What has got us to that point? It's not just being 2-1 down at half-time to a team. The likelihood is we should still go on and beat in the second half. So this has been really festering for a while, Liam. Do you know what I mean?
Well, but you know what? Viduka's still in the wrong. I watched that clip with Ian Wright when he was talking about it. You could see the disgust in Ian Wright's face because it wasn't professional. And that's the difference. Ian Wright's played in the big show, so's Viduka. You're at a level now where you're in a change room with guys who, I suppose Lubomir Moravcik just sat there laughing, shaking his head. You're in there with guys that are professionals and guys that have played with Liverpool and that. And I think what Viduka done was like, you don't get to make that decision. You play for Celtic. You don't get to say what games you're going to play or what games you're going to be upset because you've got a grievance with the manager. It doesn't matter. Do it today. Take it outside. Square them in the parking lot. Go to the papers. I don't care whatever you do. But see, you giving up at half-time when your team's playing, that's an insult to the fans. And when you watch that interview with Ian Wright, he was really annoyed. He was annoyed at the fact that, Viduka ended up profiting from that behaviour. But a few weeks later, that's him. He's gone down to Leeds United with a £10 million move. And that's not good. And I think that's why they've never been the love for Mark Viduka, ever coming back. Or he's, despite being a brilliant, incredibly talented player, he's never about the legends of the greats when we talk about Celtic. I forgot all about him. And yet he scored some incredible goals for us. But it's not in my memory base because he gave up on us. When he gives up on us, I forget him. It's one of the beautiful things about playing for Celtic. You get immortalised. You get remembered forever. You don't have to be the best player. You can be like Stefan, Rico Ione. You live in cult status and things like that. And when you give that up and you walk away from it, hell mend you.
see the clip I sent you guys
Love
with
that,
the sacking,
Brilliant point,
the Scotland Today clip where you mentioned with Shireen Nanjiani hosting it and Martin Geisler. Did you watch the clip where it says like the players arrived today, so it shows you like Berkovic and Viduka and that turning up? Every other player left through the front door. Viduka apparently left through the back door. And
but when he arrived, he fucking went in the front gate and he went kiss to the fans. I was like, this guy's again, what's he putting in his porridge in the morning? Do you know what I mean? How could that be? You know, where's the humble pie? Do you know what I mean? Like, where's the I'm pretty responsible in all of this. Do you know what I mean? He's like walking in and then drives away and he's posted, as you say, exits the side door.
Yeah.
As he's leaving, he's just like waving it for the window of his Porsche.
To me, that body language says to me he's a guy that wanted Barnes sacked and he got his way. Player power prevailed. That just reeked he just didn't care. He's like, good, I'm glad he's gone. That's what I came across as. But he went out the back. He left out the back. All the other Celtic players came back out the front door. Apart from him, he drove away in his Porsche through one of the side exits at Celtic Park. I was like, oh, man.
I think as well, see, when it's your first job in management, like he is a conundrum for you to try and deal with. You know, that would be that is a tough character. That's when you need an experienced manager. Do you know what I mean? To be coming in and, you know, knowing what they're doing with a Viduka, for example. You know, I think, you know, for whatever Barnes got right in the opening stages of this season or whatever, you know, a guy like Viduka at some point is going to play up. He's like the Australian Anelka. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like someone that you really need. You need the right guy in charge to deal with. I'm going to guess that if it's came to a head and he's even thought at any point liberated enough that he can walk out at half-time of a game, let alone the next day blow kisses at the fans, like, how is it festered into this? How has it became this? And it's probably because a combination of two things. One of them, though, can't be changed, and that's Viduka. The other one can, which is, you know, how a manager deals with Viduka being Viduka. Do you know what I mean? And I think... you know, that inexperience probably as a manager is probably just, you know, meant that was, I mean, and not, by the way, an enviable task. Dealing with someone playing up like that. This is a guy who's already been AWOL for Celtic by now, remember?
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that one, yeah.
So, yeah, I just think that was just too big for, too big a character. And I say character in a loose term, not like
totally.
You know, Liam's a character, do you know what I mean? I just mean too big you know what I mean? Like, it's just, how do you deal with that? And John Barnes, it's my first job. Like, what is this guy trying to do to me, man? I think that would be a tough ask for even experienced managers, let alone someone in the first season.
Oh, without a doubt. We'll see Viduka and whatever other players in the dressing room, they got their way. Because on February the 10th, John Barnes, Eric Black, and Terry McDermott were all relieved of their duties. And Kenny Dalglish will now be the Celtic interim boss until the end of the season. Now, of course, guys, there's two lasting images, I think, of this season. Obviously, you've got the headline, Super Caley Go Ballistic, that one, you know, the picture of the back of the newspaper. And the other one is the quite surreal image taken in Bairds bar. Because, usually you go to the pub for a pint, but no, Celtic went to that pub for a very different reason. And this is one of the surreal lasting images of this season, because you've got a picture out there or a video of Kenny Dalglish with Vidar Risev sat next to him, along with the League Cup trophy, doing a press conference from Bairds Bar. But before we get there, obviously, let's just find out how we got to that point in time. So Kenny Dal has now taken over as the Celtic boss until the end of the season, replacing Barnes. It's essentially just a couple of weeks after the abysmal result to Inverness. We'd actually beat Kilmarnock in the League Cup semi-final to get us through to a cup final. So through all the turbulence and all the madness of this season, Celtic will actually play in a cup final. But sadly, the league form doesn't really improve much. The next meeting with Rangers is again another one where we throw everything at them. It was a midweek game on March the 8th, I believe, 2000. And it's under the lights at Celtic Park, and another one where we pounded them, did everything we could, but couldn't find a goal. A very rare occurrence happened in this game. Rangers got a penalty, and Jorg Alberts missed said penalty. Jonathan Gould saved it. So when that happens, you're like, oh, luck's in. We're definitely going to win this one. You know, we're all over them. They've missed a penalty. This is our night. We're going to finally get one over them here and maybe start to claw this back. But then, no, with minutes to go, Rod Wallace pops up and scores to make it 1-0 to Rangers right at the death and they end up beating us. So that was a nice wee sucker punch for us. But yeah, we then head into the League Cup final. I mentioned earlier on that Tommy Johnson had been away on loan at Everton. So obviously Kenny Dow's made the call to bring him back. As you say, Russell, it's probably a case that John Barnes just didn't rate Johnson. But it's a good thing he did, because Johnson was back in the squad for the cup final against Aberdeen, who, as I said earlier on, despite their terrible season, still got to both cup finals. And we did beat them 2-0. Vidar Risef popped up with the first goal, and Tommy Johnson put it beyond doubt, won as a trophy. So despite the madness, we did have something to show for it. But then just after it, the next fixture was the final Glasgow derby at Ibrox. We're already well behind in the league, but Kenny Dow decided, Russell, he wasn't happy with the narrative of the anti-Celtic agenda. We talk a lot on, not just on this pod, you see other pods, other Celtic media, all over social media, this idea about the mainstream media having an anti-Celtic agenda. Now, when I read up on this incident and why this happened and how it came to be, apparently Kenny Dow also felt that there was an anti-Celtic agenda and an agenda against him. So what he did was he decided, I'm going to put the media in an uncomfortable position. I'm going to take them to a place where they're not going to enjoy it. I'm going to give them the press conference. I'm going to pick where I want it to be. And he chose Bairds Bar in the Barrowland. So him and Vidar Risef in the League Cup in hand went along to Bairds. And we get that lasting image of the two of them sat there behind the table with the microphones. And when I read the transcript, I sent you over the link for it, but some of them I was laughing at some of the answers. It was very Gordon Strachan-esque. One of the hacks asked him, what's the latest update on Henrik Larsson? He's got a sore leg. That was his answer to it. Another one, Kenny, you said that you'll decide on your future in April. Have you given us an update on that? It's still March. I'll tell you in April. That was some of his answers to them. So it was very Gordon Strachan-esque. I feel like Strachan would have said stuff like that to them and all, but fair play, but a surreal moment. But what was your take on it all, Russell?
I mean, I think the defensive side of me kind of comes out and goes, you're right, they all hate us. Do you know what I mean? Because you've been backed into a corner. The team's not doing it on the park, which obviously is where we always want the team to do the talking. And if they're not doing that, then you need to get that siege mentality. And if you do feel like the media are giving you unfair jip, for want of a better word, then of course you take Vidar Risef to Bairds Bar with you as your sidekick. Fucking strange on that. I'll never know. Like, I don't know if he just did eeny, meeny, miny, mo. How he ends up with Vidar Risef.
You, come on.
Russell, it's Bairds Bar. You want a Viking with you.
That's what it is, mate.
You want either get a Viking or a pirate. We didn't have another one, so it had to be Vidar.
Go that way, though, you'd be looking about for a big Johan Melby or something. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to be, you'd be like, you come down with me. Do you know what I mean? That reset seemed a strange one. What do I think? I don't think Kenny Dalglish was doing it from an ego point of view. Whether he felt he was getting unfair criticism or not, I think Dalglish, when you actually watch his interviews, which I watched several of around that time, he was very much like, if it's been my fault, or if it, I've already said, I can, if you think I should go as well, then by all means I should. It's just thankfully for me, they've decided to keep me on. I always felt he was a bit humble about it. I think he was almost embarrassed the situation. I think he felt guilty, but I think it was a very much a fuck you. Do you know what I mean? You're against Celtic right now, sort of vibe that he did it from. I don't think there was anything about trying to put attention onto yourself or anything. I think he just thought, I've had enough. The club's, enough. You're kicking us when we're down. It's an unfair narrative. I've watched it for fucking years anyway. And it's the best one-ups I can get because the team can't clearly do it in the park. Do you know what I mean? And that's where we were at. And let's see what you're made of. Let's see how ballsy you are in person, face-to-face, in effectively the Lions Den, for want of a bit. I know there's not going to be any Lions there, is there? But do you know what I mean? I think we will definitely put them in an awkward position. And I actually look back at it and go, I don't mind it. I thought it was throwing a curveball at something that you need to remember. This season is just going. It's all dreamy for a lot of these guys in the media. Their Rangers are back. Their heroes are back. If they're not winning that league last year and the 10 getting broke, now they're back and everyone's all, sycophantic and David Murray's the main man. The lamb's getting more succulent by the day. And Kenny Dalglish is went, Sound. You want to come take a pot shot at us? Come to Bairds Bar and do it. I'm not all against it, to be honest with you. In fact, I like seeing things that are out of the ordinary in football and bold, all these media trained, boring as anything, stupid press conferences that go on and on and on with answers already written down, coming for a textbook. I think Kenny was. I think he was doing it from a Celtic point of view, and I'm glad it happened.
Hi. Liam Graham Martin says, can you imagine Ange doing a press conference in the pub? Let's think about that for a second. How cool would that be? I think actually that would be a press conference in the pub.
We'd have to find a Kangaroo Jacks or something like that in Glasgow for him to do it, or I don't know, if we don't have an Australian pub, we could just stay at the Uggs shop or something like that. Have you got an Uggs shop out there? That's sort of Australian.
Maybe, I'll need to look into that.
But I could see Ange doing something like that. I think that's a good move to bring them in, and as well too, because even if they get nippy, they time getting out with a sticky carpet, be able to chase them down. They often get them to retract it.
See, in my head, I've got this idea that I don't want to always single out Hugh Keevins. He's just the first one that comes to mind when I think of journalists, and especially from that era. But I think he might have said that, I felt so intimidated, or it might not have been him that did it, but he apparently did write a headline about how Kerry Dal took us to a bar on Friday, but he fielded a pub team on Sunday because, we would lose 4-0 in the Rangers game that was for. But yeah, I believe it was Keevins that was quite vocal about the whole scenario. Saying, did he get punched? Did you say? Or did one?
I'm sure he got punched.
Somebody in the chat might come in and say, but I feel like
I'm sure it's your Keevins.
Okay.
I'm sure it was him that got hit.
I don't think. Okay. If Hugh Keevins get hit in a pub for a Celtic fan, it'd been mentioned it all the time.
They did used to mention it on Clyde Windle Bairds Bar, that to Hugh Keevins. They definitely did used to mention it.
Did they?
Aye, they've mentioned it loads of times. Not recently, to be fair, but growing up, definitely that's been mentioned. Like, memories of Bairds Bar and that, Hugh. Aye, definitely.
Aye.
I'm sure it was him he got hit.
Somebody in the chat will come in and.
When we say hit, they're probably like, what are you doing? Do you know what I mean?
Sensational. A journalist with a sensationalist headline. Well, I never. But yeah, the Rangers game that this was for, this last Glasgow derby, would end up losing 4-0, and the results wouldn't improve much after that. We would drop even more points, and by the end of the season, we'd lose the league by 21 points. Rangers would also win the Scottish Cup, defeating that terrible Aberdeen team in the final. So they would end up winning a double. We did have the League Cup trophy. The one only highlight I'd say from the end of the season was Henrik Larsson returned on the final day against Dundee United to a hero's reception. He'd go away and play in the Euros for Sweden, score a very nice goal against Italy, another episode that we've covered as well on Bustalgia. You can check that one out as well in the old archives. And he would come back, safe to say, better than ever. But yeah, that was literally the only sort of shining light from an absolutely horrendous end to the season, guys. But the 99-2000 season.
We're there. We've done it.
We've done it. That's it. There's a lot of talking points here. Well played. Good game, mate.
That was tough.
Yeah, it was. It was going to be a tough one. But as long as there's talking points, because there are seasons that I haven't covered yet, where I look at them and go, there's nothing to talk about there. Like Lenny's last season as his first spell, 2013-14, nothing really of interest. And then you've got Strachan's final season. We covered the 2009 League Cup final last week on Bustalgia. That was like the one highlight of Strachan's last season. Other than that, nothing really happened. But we will do Mowbray's season at some point in the very near future. We've still got a few good ones to go through as well, so I'll line up another one for next week. But yeah, that was 99-2000. John Barnes' experiment didn't quite work. But say Larsson was back, and there was a certain Martin O'Neill on the horizon as well. As the saying goes, it's always darkest just before the dawn. Well, we certainly were at the rock bottom, the most darkest it could be. It couldn't get any worse at the end of the 99-2000 season. But don't worry, the new dawn is coming in the shape of Martin O'Neill. So yeah, we already covered that as well, folks. So if you haven't seen the Martin O'Neill month that we did all 5 Martin O'Neill seasons back to back. You can also look at that as well on the channel. But yeah, we've made it to the end of the show. So now, a couple of bit of house cleaning. I'll look at the poll that I put up at the start because I asked the viewers to give us an opinion on this one, because this is the season that we did sign the much maligned Raphael Felipe Scheid. And I asked, in terms of value for money, and I believe it was the best part of 5 million we spent on him, was Raphael Scheid the worst Celtic signing ever? Yes, 79%. No, 21%. I did ask people to drop some names in the comments, and as we were going along, I saw a few names I expected to see. Ajeti's name popped up. 5 million for him. Barkas obviously popped up as well. That's another one. Then you've got guys like I saw Berkovic get mentioned as well, because we paid a record signing for him. I seen Berkovic's name get mentioned a lot, but yeah. Oh, well, the thing is, see, John's coming in and saying like Marvin Comper is a close second, but the price that we paid for Comper, see if you pay like a low price for a player and they're shite, or it's like a free transfer, you go, well, nothing ventured on the game. But this was 5 million, the best part we spent on this, as he was described, a Brazilian international. Because he had like 1 cap for the national team, and how many?
And bear in mind, £5 million. What does that mean, Phil?
Well,
a £5 million player's wages.
Oh yeah, you'll be paying that as well.
I think he's been on 10 grand plus a week.
Yeah, and that would have been, freakishly enough, Russell, that would be £5 million a lot for us to spend now, which is quite money in 2023. But the year 2000, say Berkovic was our record at 5.75 million. So Raphael Scheid was our second most expensive player at that point in time. And it's like, fuck, man. Oh, man. So some names can Barikta. Yeah, he came in with a bit of a reputation, and a good 20 minutes in his debut against Ross County, and then that was it. He was injured pretty much after that. But yeah, there's an interesting take. Beaton, when you total up his wages, what a waste of money. Interesting take. Again, I'm talking about value for money. What did we get in return?
Wasn't he my type of player? Like,
Beaton. But we've got a lot of red cards with Beaton. That's what you got with him. That was pretty much all that we was. Tabili, I think Tabili was a free transfer, Kieran. If he was really cheap when we signed him. He was rotten, don't get me wrong.
1.5, 1.7 million. Aye, for Sheffield United, I'm sure.
Yeah, Cascarino's name coming up with Barkas. There's another one. For some reason, I thought this was a player suggestion. I was like, oh, poor Monty. Like, poor Monty. I was just throwing names into the comments. I just saw Monty's name come up, and I was like, oh, what's happened there? But yeah, it's just most people have voted yes on that one. Now, a wee bit of trivia I did at the start of the show. I didn't make it specifically Celtic trivia, but it was to do with something that happened in the summer of 1999 where we started this show. And it was Manchester United obviously won the European Cup, Domestic League and Domestic Cup treble. There are 6 other teams around Europe that have done similar. Can you name the other 6 teams?
On you go, Liam. You get the first one.
Do a Bucharest.
No. That's not the answer I was expecting.
No!
Liam!
Why didn't you go for the obvious one?
Liam.
I wanted to go with a hard one.
No.
I'll go for the hard one too then.
Right, okay, go with the hard one.
I have written down Red Star Belgrade.
No.
Shit.
Red Star have won the European Cup, and Story Bucharest have won the European Cup, but they didn't win a treble that season.
Did a Hungarian team win it?
No.
Right, okay. We've thought too outside the box. Right, okay. Liam, go for the easy one.
You went too far out the box.
No.
Go for the easy one. Celtic.
Yes.
Hey!
Well done.
The next easiest one I would say is Real Madrid.
They are not a correct answer. Amazingly, Real Madrid have not won a treble. They've won the European Cup more times than anybody, but they haven't won La Liga and Copa del Rey in the same season.
Oh, I've got one, Phil.
Yes.
Not Forest.
No, not Nottingham Forest, neither. No.
AC Milan.
AC
90s?
Milan.
Early 90s?
No.
Bayern Munich.
Yes, Bayern Munich have done
Bayern
it twice.
definitely
They've done it twice, yeah.
Okay. Juve. Juventus.
Juventus, no.
Oh.
No, Juve, no.
Fuck.
This one's a lot harder than I thought. This is interesting.
Barcelona.
Yeah, Barcelona. They are the only Spanish team to have done it. Real Madrid haven't done it.
if it's not
But
Real
Barca
Madrid,
have done
one
it
of them.
twice. Yeah.
Barcelona. So we've got Celtic, Barcelona, Bayern.
Yep. So 3 more.
3 more.
Inter.
Yes, Jose Mourinho's
Jose
all-confidence
Mourinho.
Inter side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Porto.
No.
Good shout though.
It's a good
That's
shout though.
exactly what I was going to say. Ajax.
Yes, Ajax
Yes!
has won.
Now
The
we're
final one that
talking.
you haven't got is the trickiest one, I think, out of all of them.
Okay.
You'll do very well to get this.
Give us a year. They won the European Cup.
Late 80s.
Aston Villa.
No.
Did it?
I'll tell you this as a clue. The manager that was in charge of them was a guy that was very heavily linked to us at one point in the 90s as manager.
Goose Hiddink, PSV.
So Hiddink is the manager. PSV Eindhoven.
Ah, yes! Gets in there.
1987 PSV Eindhoven. They won the European Cup and they won the
That was
Eredivisie.
telepathic there, Phil.
So Man United did it in 99, and then obviously you've got Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Celtic, Ajax, PSV, and Inter. But if you want to go a little bit further, that one, Celtic, of course, won more than just 3 trophies in their season. They won 5. They won the 3 domestic trophies, the European Cup, and I believe the Glasgow Cup was still a tournament that year, or PSV 88, yeah. Aye, so there you go. So that's your 6 there. But I included that one because Celtic was an answer. So
that was good. No, fine. That was a good question. That's actually good knowledge. I wouldn't have known that. Real Madrid, I cannot believe.
Real Madrid, you would think, but no, Real Madrid have not won the La Liga and Copa del Rey in the same season that they've won a European Cup.
Wow.
There you go. So Russell, what's coming up this weekend on the bus?
We'll record a wee bus stop tomorrow, I think, Phil, at some point. We'll get that put out for tomorrow night. There'll be the Sunday Blether with the usual rascals. There'll be some PMP. I think, Liam, you fancy PMP this week? Let me know if you're free.
I love a bit of PMP. That's perfect.
Come on. Is it? Right. Well, let's do that then. You come on PMP. And also, there was a wee request, Liam, before you go. I know you're a busy man. But Michael McDonald wants you to tell us who's in the photo frames behind you, because we've got John and Yoko. I've seen this in the comments earlier. Who else is behind you?
Right, up there, Joe Strummer.
Yes.
All right. That's a Dr. Zeus, where he did erotic art.
Ah!
Right, okay.
See, there's a Hail Hill, one of the prints I made that have got all the Celtic icon, including Gil Scott Heron. That's the one, or it's a Gil Heron. That's the one that nobody usually gets. And that's a print that I made, and it's got all the boys in it. And wee bit of art, and there's that's
Class, mate. It's quality, mate. Quality.
The wise man of the bus.
The wise man of the bus.
The wise man.
But I'd seen the question earlier, so I thought we would run that past you.
A bus.
Oh!
A Bhoycie Bus.
How cool is that?
Oh, wow. A Bhoycie Bus.
Oh, mate.
The Gobbles.
Oh, that's sound, mate.
Yes, Liam.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. He's the man. Oh, that's so cool.
What a guy.
Legend, man. What a way to end the show.
What a way indeed. So, yeah, with the Bhoycie Bus is now heading off, folks. So, yeah, come on, Celtic Sunday. What's that, Liam?
Bobby Gillespie at the top. Somebody was asking if that was
Sam. Oh,
Sam.
yeah.
Oh, aye.
That's good. But no, that's a great way to end the show. But an actual Bhoycie Bus. Fantastic. A physical manifestation of it. There you go. Finally. We might have a bit of trouble fitting in that, to be fair, but nevertheless, it's good to see an actual Bhoycie Bus. But yeah, guys, we are out of here. It's been a pleasure doing the show, despite the subject matter tonight. But hey, we'll get it done. Mowbray will be in the near future as well. I will do that one too. But yeah, let's head out of here, guys. And say, come on, Celtic over the weekend. Another 3 points in the bag. Heading towards that title. And we shall catch you later, folks. See you.
Cheers.
I mean, you've all that stuff at the start. They won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now. And you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.